to the members of the Committee of Justice, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, televiewers, and members of the media. Welcome to this committee meeting of the Committee of Justice for today, Wednesday, the 8th of April, 2026. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luke Mercelina, and the Honorable Minister of Justice, Ms. Natalie Tackleton. We have a quorum of, we've established a quorum of 6 members, 6 factions. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. 5 factions. Correction, we have 6 MPs and 5 factions. I have received notice of absence from the following committee members. I've received notice of absence from MP Veronica Jansen-Webster, MP Dima Labega, MP Francisco La Cruz, MP Lyndon Lewis, MP Christopher Waver, and MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. Are there any other notifications? No? I would like to take this opportunity to wish the Honorable Chair Lady of Parliament, MP Sarah Westcott-Williams, happy 70th birthday, the incomparable Sarah Westcott-Williams. We wish her, on behalf of the Justice Committee, we wish her Godspeed and strength and ask her to continue being the Iron Lady for St. Martin that she has so demonstrated throughout the years. You know, oftentimes we judge people on what they say, but I think by the example that she has lived and her dedication to St. Martin and its people, we can actually say and judge her by what she has done. So happy 70th birthday, MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. Thank you. We go over to the agenda point. Agenda point is update the current crime situation affecting the youth on St. Martin and the communities, discussion on youth intervention options, including reintroduction of military training in Curacao, update of the Justice Ministry to strengthen and prevention and community support, IS 350/2025-2026, dated November 17th, 2025. This meeting was requested by MP E.J. Doran. It is requested by both the MP and the Minister of Justice that the 3 agenda points can be handled at once based on her presentation. So we will do the 3 agenda points at once, and then the members of the committee will be able to ask. Is there any objection from the committee members that the 3 agenda points be handled at once? I see no objections. We go over to the agenda point. I will now update on the current crime situation affecting the youth in the community. On November 17th, 2025, Parliament received a letter from MP E.J. Doran with the request for a meeting of the Committee of Justice be convened to handle the aforementioned agenda points. The presence of Prime Minister as well as the Minister as Justice was requested. This document is registered under IS 350/2025-2026. I would like to first give the floor to MP Doran, who's the requester of this meeting and this agenda point. MP Doran, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, my colleagues, the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister of Justice, persons in the Tribune, and a special good afternoon to the people of St. Martin. Mr. Chairman, indeed, the idea or the thought process behind of this is that we've seen the rise in crime over the last couple of years, and I believe that some of these, classic things or things that we had in the past played a pivotal role in shaping some of us, even members of parliament. I've heard certain colleagues talk about their military experience and different people within the community. And I believe that given the past 16 years, that missed opportunity for our young people could help in some way or another, whether it's, create a different path for them or even enhance the quality of life in terms of having that discipline training. And I think that sometimes we just need to do some simple things, low-hanging fruit, in order to fix some of our issues that we are facing. Hence the reason I request for the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice to be here, and I thank them for their presence, and I look forward to a positive discourse so that we can come to some solutions moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Doran. I would like to now give the floor to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luc Marcelina, for his opening remarks. Dr. Marcelina, MP, Prime Minister. Marcelina, you have so many titles, MP, Prime Minister, Doctor. I want to be like you one of these days.
One day. President of Parliament, Secretary General, members of Parliament, Minister Nathalie Tacklin as the Minister of Justice, the support staff on the side of the Minister of Justice and on my side, those in the Tribune, and of course the people of St. Martin, good afternoon. President, before I start with my introductory remarks concerning these topics, I would like to make use of this opportunity to congratulate the President of Parliament. As you know, just now I was part of a church service, actually to honor the great life that she still is enjoying of the President of Parliament. I think we have to acknowledge, as you said, President, that this Iron Lady has had significant influence and impact on our St. Martin, and especially where we're standing here today. And as Prime Minister of the country, in the name of the people of St. Martin, out of my heart, I would like to once more extend my congratulations to the President of Parliament, Mrs. MP Sarah Westcott Williams, and I'm wishing her, of course, as a doctor, a lot of health for her to enjoy let's call it the second half of her life. So, MP Sarah Westcott Williams, if you are listening to us, once more, congratulations today for you. President of Parliament, I would like to address the Parliament today for two principal reasons. First, I'm concerned about the state of our youth in our St. Martin, and secondly, I'm also impressed for the increasing levels of crime within our society. We must do more. We all realize that whenever there is one crime act, that is one too much. And that means that as long we are challenged by only one crime in the community, we must conclude that we have to do more. It has to be collectively and with urgency, of course, to guide, to support, and to empower our young people especially. As Prime Minister, I consider it my responsibility to support the efforts of my colleague ministers, especially the Minister of Justice, Mrs. Tacklin, as well as the constructive initiatives brought forward by the members of Parliament that aim to instill discipline, structure, and opportunity for the young people and, of course, for the next generation. In this regard, I wish to express my sincere appreciation for the proposals submitted by members of Parliament, and in particular by the Member of Parliament, Mr. Doran, concerning the introduction of military-oriented training for the youth of St. Martin. As reflected in my recent correspondence to Parliament dated March the 23rd, 2026, I recognize and appreciate the intent behind this initiative, particularly its focus on discipline, skill developments, and creating meaningful pathways for our young people. These are exactly the types of interventions we need at this particular time. I also wish to emphasize that this is not a new or isolated idea. The expansion of structured training opportunities, including military-oriented programs, has already been under active consideration. As early as, for example, March 2025, such possibilities were explored with the understanding that these programs can contribute to significantly the discipline and personal development and national resilience. This proposal is therefore both timely and aligned with ongoing efforts, and it is encouraging to see shared commitment across this Parliament on advancing solutions for our youth. Additionally, as noted in public discussions early this year, including an article dated March the 26th, 2025, the importance of ensuring equal access within the kingdom was clearly reconfirmed. It was stated, we must ensure that young people in St. Martin have equal access to the same defense education opportunities as their peers in other parts of the kingdom. Local training would not only empower our youth, but also strengthen local capacity. As, for example, in Curacao and Aruba, there are the SVT educations, that stands for Sociaal Vormingstraject, the SVT, that they have specifically for a few years already in Aruba and Curacao. This is a special military-based education program given by the coordination with the Defense of the Netherlands. This SVT program is a program that focuses on discipline, structure, and responsibility forming for the youth. This SVT, being the Sociaal Vormingstraject, gives the opportunity for a step over to a possible military career in the kingdom. Next to this SVT, there is also the VEVA opleiding, or the VEVA education, that stands for Veiligheid en Vakmanschap Education. This is a MBO opleiding, what they call in Dutch a middelbare beroepsopleiding, and that actually prepares trainees for a job by the army of the kingdom. Especially this SVT and this VEVA are two programs that seriously has to be considered for country St. Martin. And we have to specifically look into these two streams to see if they will have any significance for country St. Martin. The principle of equity within the kingdom must guide our approach. Opportunities already exist, as I just said, in Aruba and Curacao, and St. Martin must not be left behind. Secondly, I'm here in my capacity as Minister of General Affairs with responsibility for kingdom relations and interior affairs, which include matters related to defense and military cooperation. Let me be clear. I support the exploration and development of structured military training opportunities for our youth. Together with our kingdom partners, we should actively pursue avenues to extend access to such programs, whether in the Netherlands, Curacao, Aruba, or St. Martin, or importantly here on St. Martin, particularly in connection with the development of the kingdom military presence on the islands. At the same time, we must proceed in a responsible and structured manner. There are legal, operational, financial, and logistic consideration that we must carefully address to ensure that any program implemented is sustainable, effective, and tailored to the needs of St. Martin. To that end, I intend to continue engagements with the Minister of Defense, and I have already indicated my openness to further discussions with members of Parliament, including MP Doran, and of course the Minister of Justice, Mrs. Natalie Tacklin, that sits next to me, and of course further coordination with other ministries, for example, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, and see what the greater impact will be in case we decide to move forward with a military educational trajectory for country St. Martin. I also welcome concrete recommendations from this Parliament so that they may be incorporated into our discussions with our Kingdom partners. Honourable Members of Parliament, our youth are at a crossroads, and for sure we realize that the choices we make today will determine whether they are drawn toward risk or redirected toward purpose. Providing structure, discipline, and opportunity is not optional. It is essential at this particular moment. Let us move forward together, united in our responsibility to create pathways that empower our young people and strengthen the future of St. Martin. Honourable President of Parliament, with your indulgence, seeing that we fused the three topics together in this parliamentary session, I would like to seek your approval to give the floor to the Minister of Justice that will give a comprehensive presentation that will cover all the three topics that stands today on the agenda. With this, I would like to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Luc Mercelina. I hereby give the floor to the Honorable Minister of Justice, Ms. Natalie Tacklin, for her open remarks and presentation. And Ms. Tacklin, Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too want to take the opportunity to wish a very happy birthday to the President of Parliament, Ms. Sarah Westcott Williams. As a young girl growing up on this island, I can say that she was a role model, I think, for many of us, and showed a lot of us, and myself included, that no room was too big for us and that we too could have a seat at the table. And after seeing her as a child, to now be able to work with her, it's also an honor of mine. And I hope that I look as good and I have as much energy to do Zumba and walk every weekend as our chairlady does. So a very happy birthday to her. Then I'll go on then to the substantive part of this meeting. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, those sitting in the tribune, and of course the people of St. Martin watching at home, thank you for this invitation. The agenda before us today covers three interconnected matters: the current crime situation affecting youth and communities, discussion on youth intervention options, including the question of a military-style training, and an update on the Ministry of Justice efforts to strengthen prevention and community support. I will address each of these in turn, drawing on the data and the programs that my ministry has compiled. Before I begin, I want to establish two foundational points that guide everything that the ministry does in this area. The first, these challenges are not new. Youth vulnerability, youth delinquency, and their spillover effects on communities have been present for a long time. What changes over time is not the existence of the problem, but the form that it takes, the intensity of certain trends, and, crucially, the capacity of our institutions and our communities to respond. Acknowledging that history matters, because it tells us that quick fixes have not worked and they will not work now. Second, we will not solve this through justice alone. Real prevention and real resilience require a broader partnership. Parents and guardians, schools and youth services, community organizations, the private sector, and the relevant ministries, each within their own responsibilities and legal mandates. This is not a new observation either. The governing program 2025-2028 explicitly frames safety and justice as shared responsibility that requires cooperation across ministries and partners. The Ministry of Justice is here today to account for its part in that shared responsibility and to be direct about what the other parts require. This brings us then into the first agenda item, the crime situation affecting youth and communities. The 2025 crime statistics offer cause for cautious optimism, but also for serious concern. On the positive side, St. Martin recorded a 19% decrease in homicides, a 15% decrease in armed robberies, an 11% decrease in traffic accidents, a 5.5% reduction in 911 calls, and a 37% decrease in noise complaints. At the same time, enforcement activity increased. Traffic tickets issued was up by 10%, the number of arrests also up by 5%, drugs seized up by 8%, more than 650 kilos, and firearms seized up by 11%. These numbers show that both the crime environment and the enforcement capacity are shifting. However, the trend that demands our urgent attention and sustained attention is gun-related crime. Despite the overall improvement in headline figures, the pattern of firearms in the hands of young people is a serious and growing concern that requires a holistic, multidisciplinary response. In 2025, 50 minors were arrested. Of these, 44 were male and 6 were female. The arrest categories include armed theft, receiving stolen goods or fencing, weapons violations, and a person in possession of a firearm. The diversity of offense categories confirms that the youth justice challenge is not one-dimensional. In 2026, these are year-to-date figures. In the first months of 2026, of 171 suspects arrested in total, 11 of these were minors, representing 6.5% of all arrests. 10 of the 11 were male, and most of them were 17 years of age. The majority held the Dutch nationality. The offenses among this group include vandalism, threats, theft, receiving stolen goods, and critically, discharging a firearm. That last category alone should focus our attention today. The data tells us that most young people on St. Martin are not offenders, but a small cohort, often older male teenagers with access to weapons, is driving disproportionate harm. Behind each of those young people is a story of risk factors: disrupted schooling, unstable family environments, limited pathways to work, and exposure to a violence culture that normalizes weapons as a source of status. The profile that emerges from that data is specific and should focus our response. We're not dealing with a broad, generalized wave of youth crime. We are dealing with a concentrated pattern: older male teenagers, Dutch nationals, disproportionately involved in weapons offenses. That profile points toward targeted, early intervention in schools, in communities, and in the networks through which firearms reach young hands, rather than a general enforcement surge. And that is precisely why enforcement alone cannot be the answer. That is where we begin, but not where we stop. Then we move on then to the second agenda point, which concerns youth intervention options, including military training. I want to be precise about how the ministry frames the youth problem, because precision matters. We're not speaking about an entire generation. We're speaking about 3 interconnected but distinct groups. We have at-risk youth. These are not offenders, but young people at heightened vulnerability. They're school dropouts, disengaged youth, those in unstable home environments. The policy implication are that these are primarily an education and social services matter and not a justice matter. Our role is to refer early and coordinate, but not prosecute. If we do not intervene at this stage, the risk of escalation into another group here on the picture rises sharply. Then we have youth exposed to violence. These young people are victims. They're witnesses or they're recruits under pressure. Exposure happens in their neighborhoods, around schools, and increasingly through social media. The policy implication here is that this group requires both targeted enforcement against those who create the violent environment and active community-level protection for young people caught within it. Then, of course, the youth that are in conflict with the law, young people who have come into contact with the justice system. In this situation, the state must respond, but proportionately and with a focus on behavioral change, not only on punishment. For first-time and low-level offenses, diversion is the right tool. Where serious violence occurs, the response must be firm, because the government also has a duty to protect victims and the wider community. Then we look at the root causes and risk factors. We can pool these into multiple groups as well. If we want results, we have to be clear about what drives youth vulnerability and youth offending. There's no single cause, and there is no single institution that can fix it. The risk factors cluster around several areas that reinforce one another. The first one is family and parenting capacity. For many young people, the first line of protection is the home. When the home environment is stable, supervised, and supportive, it reduces risk significantly. When it's unstable because of conflict, neglect, substance abuse, trauma, absence of consistent caregivers, or simply overwhelmed parenting capacity, the risk rises sharply. Mental health is part of this picture. Untreated trauma, behavioral challenges, or substance abuse-related issues in the home can set a young person on a downward spiral that eventually reaches the justice system. But I want to be clear that this is not about blaming parents. It's about recognizing that families sometimes need support, parenting guidance, social services, mental health assistance, and early intervention when warning signs appear. We also need to be honest about one of the more uncomfortable realities. In St. Martin, many parents are simply not present because they cannot afford to be. Minimum wage, the cost of living, and the reality of working multiple jobs to make ends meet means that supervision and engagement at home are luxuries that many families cannot consistently provide. This is not a failing of those parents. It is a structural condition, and it is one that requires a policy response that goes well beyond what any justice system can deliver. If we want fewer young people entering the justice system, we must strengthen the ability of families to keep children safe, supervised, and engaged. The second one is education and school safety. Schools are not only places of learning. They are also major protective environments. When attendance is low, when students feel unsafe, and when discipline and support systems are weak, the likelihood of disengagement rises, and that creates space for negative influence. School absence and dropout are not minor administrative matters. They are often the earliest visible warning sign that a young person is losing daily structure, supervision, supportive networks, and a realistic path toward education or work. A serious youth strategy must therefore treat school safety and attendance as core pillars. Clear protocols, early warning and referral systems, and effective cooperation between education authorities, youth services, and where necessary, law enforcement, but always within lawful and proportionate boundaries. The third is socioeconomic opportunity. Youth risk rises sharply when young people see no realistic path to stability, no job prospects, no training pathway, no meaningful social mobility. In those conditions, illegal income and status can become attractive alternatives. Prevention, therefore, is not only about programs, it is also about opportunity. We need credible pathways into training, apprenticeships, first jobs, and mentorship, real options that lead somewhere. This is why the private sector, vocational institutions, and employers must be active partners. School and training providers can deliver skills, employers can offer supervised entry opportunities. Without that triangle, prevention remains abstract. And without mentorship, consistent guidance from adults who can set boundaries, model decision-making, and intervene early, too many at-risk youth are left without the anchor that they so desperately require. This is also where Parliament has a direct role. The ministry can build the framework and coordinate the partnerships, but legislative and policy tools that incentivize employer participation, formalize apprenticeship pathways, and support vocational institutions are instruments that sit with Parliament. As I mentioned in my introduction, the current governing program frames safety and justice as a shared responsibility. Nowhere is that shared responsibility more concrete than in creating the economic pathways that make prevention work. Then, peer pressure and social identity. Adolescence is a stage where peer dynamics matter enormously. Some young people are drawn into risky behavior, not primarily for money, but for acceptance, status, or belonging. In a small community like St. Martin, group conflicts can escalate quickly, and online exposure can amplify reputational pressure and normalize violence. This is why credible alternatives, positive activities, mentoring, and structured pathways must genuinely compete with the status and identity offered by negative networks. Finally, community safety environment. Even a motivated young person can be pulled off track when community safety is fragile. Easy access to weapons, the normalization of violence, gang dynamics, drug activity, and the intimidation can turn ordinary conflicts into severe incidents. This requires a balanced response, targeted enforcement against serious violence and weapon-related crime, combined with community-based prevention, credible alternatives, and visible guardianship in high-risk areas, so that young people experience safety and structure in their daily environment. A young person who is not in school, living in an unstable home, sees no job on the horizon, and is surrounded by a weapon culture, is a young person operating at maximum risk. Justice alone cannot fix that, but justice can be part of the solution. And I want to be clear that this analysis is not new, and it is not only the ministry's view. The Law Enforcement Council, or de Raad voor de Rechtshandhaving, in its 2013 inspection report on juvenile probation in St. Martin, stated that youth delinquency is not a new phenomenon and not a justice-only matter. Their follow-up report in 2021 explicitly called for an integral interministerial approach and noted that follow-up on those recommendations remained limited, including the non-organization of the HALT project and the absence of clear procedures. But I want to assure everybody that the ministry is now acting on those findings today. And the ministry's framework and our integrated response to the problems that I just sketched are built on 4 pillars. The first one is prevention. And let me be direct that prevention is not soft. It is the most cost-effective form of public safety. This means early identification and referral of at-risk youth, especially where school absence, loitering, or repeated low-level incidents are visible signs. Consistent coordination with schools and youth services so that the early warning signs do not become criminal cases. And community-based engagement and presence, particularly in and around schools and known hotspots, paired, of course, with clear messaging that weapons and violence are unacceptable. Then, diversion. For suitable entry-level cases, keeping young people out of the formal criminal trajectory through proportionate early intervention. Diversion is a tool for public safety. It prevents escalation, reduces recidivism, and preserves system capacity to focus on serious violence. HALT, in essence, is an early intervention program for suitable youth cases, addressing misconduct quickly, keeping young people out of formal punitive criminal trajectories, and focusing on accountability, making amends, guidance, and preventing repeat behavior. The goal is to intervene early, proportionately, and consistently, so that young people do not graduate from minor wrongdoing into serious harm. Then, of course, enforcement. Firm and intelligence-led enforcement where the facts demand it, particularly for serious violence, weapons possession, and organized criminal recruitment of youth. The public is entitled to safety, and victims are entitled to protection and justice. Then the 4th pillar is aftercare, the pillar where policy most often succeeds or fails. If a young person exits a sanction or intervention and is simply returned to the same high-risk environment without structure, without support, without a pathway, the cycle repeats itself. Aftercare must be built into the front end of policy. Supervision and guidance through probation and guardianship mechanisms, practical reintegration support, including school reentry, training placement, and first job pathways, and continued mentoring for those at risk of relapse. Rehabilitation and reintegration require partners beyond justice, education authorities, youth services, mental health support, and, critically, the private sector. I want to acknowledge specifically the work of MP Doran, who called this meeting today, and MP Roseberg, both of whom have been consistent and constructive champions of the idea of SVT or something like it. Their engagement has moved this from a general aspiration to a concrete agenda item, and that matters. The goals at the heart of this proposal, structure, discipline, teamwork, a sense of purpose, and a genuine reset for young people who have lost direction, are goals that the Ministry of Justice fully shares. The energy and conviction behind this idea are an asset, and I welcome the opportunity to work with Parliament to turn that vision into something concrete and lasting. MP Roseberg has also submitted formal correspondence on this subject matter. Her letter of March 12, 2026, IS 825-2025-2026, which followed her earlier letter of February 12, 2026, and included observations from a personal visit to Aruba to observe the SVT program in operation. I had indicated to MP Roseberg, given the overlap in today's agenda, I would address her questions on the floor rather than a separate written response. I want to honor that commitment to the MP right now. MP Roseberg asked specifically whether the Crime Fund could serve as a financing mechanism for an SVT-type initiative. The short answer is yes, but within important limits. The Crime Fund law is a project financing instrument. Its mandate is the preparation and execution of crime fighting and crime prevention projects designated annually in the ministry's policy plan. A well-designed SVT pilot that is time-bound, properly scoped, and designated in the annual policy plan would be eligible for Crime Fund support. That is a realistic and legitimate pathway for the startup phase. However, I want to be direct about what comes after. The Crime Fund was not designed to finance structural ongoing programs. If the SVT takes root and grows beyond a pilot, it will require a dedicated structural budget line. That brings me to a challenge I would be less than honest not to name. The Ministry of Justice operates under significant and persistent budget pressure. We are constantly balancing urgent operational needs against the investments that prevention and rehabilitation require. Finding sustainable structural funding for an SVT-type program will be one of the defining challenges of making this initiative real, and it is a challenge that will require a budget conversation that goes beyond this committee and this ministry alone. Before turning to the feasibility questions, I also want to name a local option that deserves serious consideration: St. Martin's Youth Brigade. The Youth Brigade already provides a structured, disciplined environment for young people with roots in the community and an existing operational framework. Rather than building an entirely new formation structure from scratch, or depending wholly on Kingdom support and external infrastructure, exploring whether the Youth Brigade can serve as a local anchor or partner for any SVT-type program is a practical and cost-effective avenue the feasibility study should specifically examine. That would allow us to build on what already exists here, rather than importing a model wholesale from a larger jurisdiction. In that spirit, the ministry, along with the Ministry of General Affairs, as mentioned by the Prime Minister, is actively exploring whether St. Martin can develop its own version of the Social Development Track, or SVT. The structured formation program operating in Aruba and Curacao with the Dutch Ministry of Defense support. In both countries, the program's professionalization was actually backed by the Landspakket, which allocated funding specifically for the SVT alongside militia support in those countries. St. Martin did not sign on to the same Landspakket arrangements as Aruba and Curacao, which means that this specific funding route does not automatically extend to us. Any SVT-type program in St. Martin would require a separate agreement with the Dutch Ministry of Defense, and that negotiation is itself part of what the feasibility study must explore. SVT is a time-bound military-style formation program, typically around 4 months, for vulnerable youth, focusing on structure, discipline, self-development, teamwork, communication, responsibility, and job readiness. And it's typically followed by a pathway toward training, work, and certification. It's also important to note that the SVT is designed for participants aged 17, 18 to 24, youth who are out of school or have not yet found direction in life. This is not a program for younger at-risk youth. It targets the older adolescent and young adult cohort. Significantly, that aligns directly with what our recent arrest data shows. The majority of minor suspects arrested in 2026 are 17 years old, and the program's upper range of 24 covers the young adult window where intervention still makes a meaningful difference. SVT therefore reaches the right age group, but it also means SVT cannot substitute for the earlier prevention work needed for younger teenagers at risk. The two operate at different ends of the pipeline, and both are necessary. If St. Martin pursues this pathway, it should be positioned within the integrated response as part of the aftercare and structured opportunity segment, not as punishment, but as a controlled and accountable route towards stability and employability, subject, of course, to feasibility, cost, safeguarding, and legal parameters. At the same time, we must be honest about St. Martin's starting position, which differs materially from Aruba and Curacao. Unlike those countries where SVT has a longer operational history and where dedicated defense-related structures and facilities are available, St. Martin does not currently have its own barracks or comparable military infrastructure, nor the same standing operational capacity to host and run a formation program at scale. Any exploration must therefore include a realistic assessment of what can be delivered locally, what would require kingdom support, and what is cost-effective given St. Martin's scale. This honesty is not a reason to step back from the idea, but it's a reason that we design it properly. Before I turn to the feasibility questions, I want to be explicit about something that is easy to overlook. It should be the next slide, I think. Yeah. This is not just the sole responsibility of the Ministry of Justice. An SVT-type program touches the mandates of several ministries, and it will only succeed if they are active partners, not passive observers. The Ministry of VSA, responsible for social development and youth affairs, has a central role in the program design, the referral pathways, and the social support structures that must surround it. The Ministry of TIAT has a direct stake in the second phase, the work-learning trajectory that follows the formation program, depends on training institutions, apprenticeship frameworks, and employer engagement that fall squarely within the ministries or the Ministry of TIAT's mandate. And of course, the relationship with the Dutch Ministry of Defense, which is the critical kingdom partnership that this program requires, must ultimately be pursued with the support and involvement of the Ministry of General Affairs, which holds responsibility for kingdom relations. I name these explicitly not to deflect responsibility from the Ministry of Justice, but because a program that is designed and owned by justice alone will not have the breadth to succeed. The feasibility study must be an interministerial effort from the start. To move forward responsibly, the ministry will initiate a short feasibility and design study covering 3 practical questions so that we build this properly, sized for St. Martin, and delivered with the right safeguards. The feasibility study will cover, among others, the following questions. How many people are we realistically talking about per year and per intake of the program, based on risk profiles and referral pathways? St. Martin's scale and case volume may not be comparable to Aruba and Curacao, and the program design must fit local realities, not be imported wholesale from a larger jurisdiction. The second question is, where would the program take place, given that St. Martin lacks a dedicated barracks and comparable supporting infrastructure? What kingdom partnerships, including with the Dutch Ministry of Defense, could provide the facilities, expertise, and oversight capacity that we cannot supply locally? And I know that on this specific point that MP Roseberg, during her trip to Aruba, had also looked into the opportunity of us making use of some of the spaces that Aruba has and potentially also with Curacao, but these are, of course, questions that we would have to take into that study. Then, of course, what is the governance model? Who leads, who oversees, and how are quality and safeguarding standards enforced? Options for delivery could range from a small pilot with external support to phased implementation to a partnership model with Aruba or Curacao, each with different costs and oversight requirements. The feasibility study will assess which is realistic given St. Martin's starting position. Critically, an SVT-type program only has lasting value if it is linked to a credible next step: job training, apprenticeships, supervised work placement, or structured education return. That second phase requires concrete agreements with training providers, employers, and the responsible ministries. In Curacao, this post-SVT work-learning trajectory runs for 7 to 9 months and is managed by the local government. Defense is not involved at that stage. St. Martin would need equivalent arrangements in place before the first intake. Without them, the program risks becoming a standalone experience without durable impact. The ministry is committed to building that second phase in from the start. I can also share that the ministry, along with Ministry of General Affairs, is currently in active discussions with the Dutch Ministry of Defense regarding this feasibility study. There is willingness on their end to engage, and that is an encouraging sign. At the same time, I want to be candid. Conducting a meaningful feasibility study also requires capacity on the St. Martin side, staff time, coordination, and dedicated attention from officials who are already carrying a full operational load. That is a real constraint and one that we are working to address. But the conversations are underway and the direction is the right one. I look forward to working closely with the members who have championed this cause as we move it from concept to design. Everything I've described, prevention, diversion, and the SVT pathway, aftercare, must be grounded in the law. I want to make a point that is sometimes overlooked. The legal framework within which we operate is not a constraint on our ambition. It is the foundation that makes our work durable. Programs built on solid legal footing survive changes of administration, withstand legal challenge, and earn the confidence of Kingdom partners. Programs that improvise, that operate in legal gray areas, or without having clear statutory authority are vulnerable. They can be overturned, defunded, or discredited. The 3 legal layers that govern our work are therefore not obstacles to navigate around. They are the reason that what we build will last. The pillars are as follows. St. Martin's Constitution, the Staatsregeling, requires the government to actively pursue policies for the protection and development of children. This is not a soft aspiration. It is a governing obligation. It is the constitutional basis for everything that I have described today. The prevention programs, the diversion tools, the SVT pathway, and I'll talk in a bit about the Veiligheidshuis that we're also working on. When members ask why the ministry invests in these areas rather than simply prosecuting more, the answer begins with the Constitution. Then, our international obligations. The Convention on the Rights of the Child binds St. Martin to a specific standard. In every decision affecting a child, their best interests must come first. Detention is a last resort, used for the shortest appropriate time. Youth justice must focus on reintegration, not only on punishment. And I want to be clear about what this means in practice. Prevention, early intervention, and aftercare are not soft options that a government can choose to skip when the budgets are tight. They are legally required. The HALT program, diversion, structured aftercare, these things are not charity. They are what the law demands of us. Then, our penal code allows for proportional accountability when young people commit offenses, and it should do so. The public and victims are entitled to a justice response, but the penal code also requires that the system be capable of delivering credible alternatives to detention. That is not currently fully the case. The legal authority exists, the operational capacity and the statutory clarity do not always follow. Closing that gap is part of what the legislative agenda that I am about to describe is designed to do. 3 things that we need to legislate. Operational progress is necessary, but it's not sufficient on its own. 3 areas require clear statutory footing, and the ministry is committed to advancing the 3 of these. First is HALT and structured diversion. Articles 153, 161, and 188 of the Criminal Code give us a foundation. But a foundation is not a building. We still need clear implementing rules, defined eligibility criteria, explicit roles for police, prosecutors, and the Court of Guardianship, and transparent procedures for referral and completion. The Law Enforcement Council identified this gap already in our legislation in 2013. It identified it again in 2021. And we're ensuring that during this term that we close that gap. Second, the legal status of SVT-type pathways. Before any young person enters a formation program under justice referral, the law must be explicit about what that program is. A voluntary social program, a diversionary measure, or part of sentencing and aftercare. That distinction matters for rights, for oversight, and for accountability. St. Martin will not improvise when it comes to our children. The legal framework will be clear before the first intake. Third, juvenile justice institutions. When a court imposes detention or a treatment measure on a young person, the system must be capable of executing that measure in a way that is consistent with the Constitution and the Convention on the Rights of the Child. That means proper legislation governing the rights of detained juveniles, minimum standards of care and education, and external oversight mechanisms. This is not a theoretical concern, it is a current gap that the ministry is working to address through legislative development. These three areas are interconnected. A young person moving through the justice system, from first contact through possible diversion to any detention measure, should encounter a system that is lawful at every stage. That is what this ministry is building. Let me now turn to what the ministry is already doing on the ground. The analysis and framework that I've described are not just aspirational, but they're actually being built in practice. The ministry provided an earlier overview, and today I want to build on that with the most current operational picture. To organize what follows, the programs and initiatives I will describe fall into three clusters. First, school and community-facing prevention, the work that reaches young people before they enter the justice system. The second is rehabilitation and reintegration, programs that give youth who have already had contact with the system a structured path back. And third, intelligence-led enforcement and regional cooperation, the operational work that targets the network and weapons that flow into this country and drive serious violence. Across all three, the ministry is not starting from zero, and there is significant and growing activity. First, a little bit about what's going on at the Jeugd en Zede, as we call it within KPSM. I'll just call them JZZ. The Youth and Moral Division of KPSM investigates all youth-related crime. The Youth Cases Meeting, bringing together the Public Prosecutor's Office, the Court of Guardianship, and the CPOs, reviews cases individually to determine the right intervention, punishment, prevention, or structured training. That is exactly the kind of coordinated case-by-case approach that good youth justice requires. Additionally, Jeugd en Zede detectives attend parent-teacher meetings alongside our CPOs and our school resource officers and conduct radio outreach on alcohol and drug use during carnival season. And they also provide community education on what happens when young people enter the justice system. Then the work being done by our CPOs. The CPOs are running 5 active projects. The first one is called the Trust Box, an anonymous reporting channel in schools that allows students to report violence without fear of being identified as informants. And this directly addresses the snitching barrier that we have within our culture. Then the community police officer in Dutch Quarter is bringing police services closer to the residents to improve access, trust, and early intervention. Not necessarily totally a youth project, but relevant. We also have a dementia project, which is a voluntary registration system for dementia patients to enable faster, safer police responses in emergencies. Then we have the District Community Survey on Crime, where we're gathering resident perceptions of safety and police performance in order to identify priorities within the various communities. Then we have the Feedback Project, which is systematic aftercare, following police reports and providing preventive guidance and identifying underlying issues before they escalate. The CPOs also have a community barcode flyer system underway, and hotel and tourist safety flyers, and a pending Stay Away from Crime awareness flyer for Group 8 primary school students. A student speaker initiative encourages secondary students to speak to younger peers about staying focused in school. The Police and Community in Practice program is now in its drafting phase, so I can't give too much information on that one. Then we have our school resource officers. The SROs trained in Miami at the Miami-Dade School of Justice in 2025 have been actively deployed across St. Martin's secondary schools. They have conducted school management meetings at MPC, SMVTS, Max CSE, Sundial Academy, VBC, St. Dominic and Academy Academic, and Charlotte Brookson Academy. And every school has welcomed the program. Parent-teacher meeting attendance has yielded positive parental support, and incidents handled include a school fight at Sundial, a knife incident at St. Dominic, and a sparring situation at CBA, each addressed directly and proportionately. Together with Jeugd en Zede, the prosecutor's office, and the CPOs, the school resource officers are running a campaign called Would the Truth Matter If It Was You? Telling the Truth Isn't Snitching, which has already generated 2 radio interviews and is preparing school presentations for after the exam period. Then our crime fund projects, for which I can assure Parliament when 2026 budget comes to Parliament, there will be an accompanying policy plan for the crime fund for Parliament to approve. Through the crime fund, the ministry is supporting several youth-focused programs. The first one is equine therapy, so with horses, therapeutic interventions for minor offenders displaying aggression or trauma-related symptoms. There's a lot of research surrounding this and the way that handling horses can be a positive impact. Then we have Project Sing, a 40-hour general property maintenance course with supervised community service, developed in collaboration with NEPA and the Court of Guardianship's Youth Probation Department. This equips participants with employable skills while reinforcing accountability. Then we have the HALT pilot, a 2-year diversion program for first-time and minor juvenile offenders, which combines counseling, community service, and behavioral workshops. Then we have Kids at Sea sailing training, which is a maritime skills curriculum for at-risk youth, aged 18 to 30. The program leads to 3 internationally recognized certifications, which is the STWC 2010, the 15-meter power boat, and the engineer grade 1. So this would then equip them with skills that would give them a career path after that. And we're looking at linking the participants to this program to individuals who are coming out of MLC, for example, or that have been in touch with our Court of Guardianship so that we can really follow their trajectories and try to give them a pathway into reintegration and a different purpose in life. Then through the Court of Guardianship, research conducted in 2025 by Ms. Michaela Hart of the University of the Virgin Islands found that early signs of delinquent behavior frequently emerge at the primary school level. Based on this finding, a preventative program titled Think Ahead has been developed in collaboration with the Court of Guardianship, the Public Prosecutor's Office, KPSM, Turning Point, and the Mental Health Foundation. A pilot is running in late March through early April 2026 in several primary schools. Results will be used to finalize the program for island-wide annual implementation. In addition, the Court of Guardianship has developed carnival season PSAs for radio and social media addressing underage drinking, fighting, drug use, and parental responsibility. Maybe you've heard some of them on the radio already. Then we have our Veiligheidshuis, or to translate it into English, our Care and Safety House initiative. Since March 2026, the Ministry of Justice has welcomed a Rijkstrainee, who is actually a daughter of the soil and from here, and we hope that she comes to work for the Ministry of Justice after she finishes her traineeship. But she has been seconded to us from the Ministry of BZK, and her project with us right now that we've drafted for her is to support us in the first steps towards establishing a Veiligheidshuis in St. Martin, so a care and safety house. What is a care and safety house? It's a multidisciplinary structure that brings together healthcare, education, social services, and justice partners to develop tailored intervention plans for individuals with complex, intersecting challenges. The initial pilot will focus on youth and families, and the goal is early identification and intervention before individuals enter formal criminal systems. This is precisely the kind of proactive, integrated approach that the research of the Law Enforcement Council have consistently called for. Then we have the Caribbean Field Lab and War Room. St. Martin participated in the Caribbean Field Lab, which was a 5-day intensive program in Curacao involving St. Martin, Aruba, and Curacao and Bonaire. And the St. Martin team actually focused specifically on firearm-related incidents involving youth. The intervention strategy is now being implemented through a 12-week structured youth-led innovation challenge. This means that we have selected 9 students working in 3 teams that they're developing solutions to youth involvement in armed crime. Participants receive a monthly stipend, mentorship, meals, and transportation in order to complete the project. The showcase event will determine which ideas receive funding for pilot implementation, and outputs will inform the development of our youth empowerment hub. And this one I'm actually quite proud of and impressed with, and we're really looking for, it's easy sometimes for adults to think that we know the answers to youth problems, but oftentimes they're the ones that can better solve their problems than we can and have a perspective that we don't. So by using the youth to try to target the kind of gun-related crime and armed crime, we hope to have a positive spin-off. Sub-objectives of this Caribbean Field Lab program include a 30% decrease in violent gun crime involving the youth, a 20% increase in the youth feeling safe without firearms, and securing long-term stakeholder commitments. Then we have the War Room 2026, which will be held on St. Martin and will focus specifically, once more, on youth-related gun violence, building on the kingdom-wide intelligence cooperation launched in 2024. Early November, St. Martin participates in the Regional Network Analyst Meeting, which brings together more than 20 countries from across the Caribbean to share knowledge and strengthen networks in the field of crime analysis. These regional connections strengthen our intelligence position and support broader working relationships in investigations into organized crime, including the cross-border networks and that supply firearms to the youth of our island. Finally, in closing, let me close with a principle and not a promise. An integrated response means prevent where we can, divert where it works, enforce where we must, and follow through with aftercare so that the outcomes last. Our objective is clear: reduce violence, reduce repeat offending, and expand credible pathways back into school, training, and work for every young person who can be reached before it's too late. Youth safety requires action, but it requires lawful, coordinated, and sustained action. Our response is not only about strengthening programs, it is also about modernizing the legal and policy framework so that diversion, structured pathways, and juvenile measures operate with legal certainty, proper safeguards, and measurable effectiveness. That is not weakness, but it is how durable results are built. The Ministry of Justice is committed to continuing and expanding the school resource officer and CPO programs in schools and communities, operationalizing the HALT diversion framework with a proper legal and procedural basis, advancing the SVT feasibility and design study as an interministerial effort with VSA, Education, TIAT, and General Affairs to bring structured youth development from concept to pilot, advancing the Care and Safety House pilot as a centerpiece of early intervention architecture, and driving the Caribbean Field Lab intervention through its 100-day challenge to tangible outcomes, continuing intelligence-led enforcement, particularly targeting firearms and organized criminal networks that recruit youth, and progressing the legislative agenda on HALT, SVT-type structured pathways, and the juvenile justice institutions, justitiële jeugdinrichting, so that our interventions rest on solid legal ground. We welcome the committee's engagement, we welcome the scrutiny, and we ask one thing plainly. St. Martin's young people are not a problem to be managed. They are a generation to be invested in. The ministry is ready to do its part, and we ask that our partners across government, in this parliament, and also within our communities do theirs. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister for Luke Marcelina, for your comments, and to you as well, Honorable Minister of Justice Natalie Tacklin, for your presentation. Which member do I give the floor to have questions towards either the Prime Minister or the Minister of Justice. MP York, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to yourself, the SG ministers and support staffs, honorable colleagues, and the viewing public. Mr. Chairman, I'm no longer part of this committee. However, I found the topic too important to miss. And I would like to thank the Minister for her extensive presentation. And clearly, the ministry has been busy. I just have a few questions. I don't know whether to pose the first one to the Prime Minister or the Minister of Justice, so I'll just pose it and they can decide who'll answer. The Prime Minister, in his opening remarks, in referencing the topic at hand today being the meeting of the agenda points, that it falls in line with what the government has been working on and busy with, or basically the vision of the government. And I would like, the question is the Prime Minister referring to other set of projects, or would the Prime Minister, was he referencing the projects that the Minister of Justice alluded to in her presentation? So just that question. And also, with all the projects mentioned, I know it's not maybe 100% ironed out yet, but do any of the projects have a estimated start date? If so, I don't know if the Minister has them readily available as yet, but is that something that the Minister can share with Parliament, I don't know, in a follow-up, or if she has the information via you, Mr. Chairman, readily available? Also, I did not get in the presentation, or get out of the presentation, whether specific NGOs were targeted to execute these programs. If so, can the Minister name a few of the NGOs that are already involved or will be involved? And lastly, for now, the Minister of Justice explained that when referring to the SVT and other projects that the crime fund can be used for, that it can be used for them, but with clear limitations and guidelines. So can the Minister extrapolate or expound more on what these limitations are, and how will they be guided moving forward with these different projects? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP York. Does any other MP, I see the MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ministers, for the very extensive presentation and also points. Mr. Chairman, in the beginning of the meeting, we asked to merge the agenda points, which I agree with. However, during the entire presentation, which was, in my opinion, kind of like the basis of the whole thing, I missed the point where discussion on youth intervention options, which was clear, including the reintroduction of military training in Curacao. I didn't get the military training part or the idea from the ministry. However, I did see that a feasibility study will be done for SVT, but which is a social informing training, but nothing to do with the military training that I was referring to from the inception. So brings me to wonder if I should go back to the responses given when we were going to IPCO in February 22, where one of the questions were that Parliament sent to the government: can the government provide any information or plans as regards to military training for the youth of St. Martin? And the response was, currently there are no concrete plans or policy commitments to introduce military-style training for the youth of St. Martin. The Ministry of Justice does not support military-style training as a quick fix, and any such proposal must be considered within a broader mix of social and preventive interventions. So am I to assume through you, Mr. Chairman, that that is the reason why the military training wasn't addressed? And if so, it leaves me a bit more confused because, I mean, even hearing the Prime Minister speak in different forums, he seems to be for it. And they talk about the governing program. I'm not sure if that's in it, but then the Minister of Justice is indicating that the Ministry of Justice is not for it. So lacking the cohesion. And for me, basically in a nutshell, we got a clear explanation then on the SVT training, which is great, which my colleague has been busy with. but the gist of this meeting with this agenda point, with these clear questions, for me is missing in that part. Of course, the part where the intervention in the different programs in the crime situation, that for me was crystal clear. But when it comes to the end, so to speak, in terms of the military training, that was just left up in the air, in my humble opinion, because I don't see any information in that regard. So my question then would be, is the Ministry of Justice still in line with the statement of February 2026 that they are not in favor of military-style training? And if so, then my question to the Minister of General Affairs, how does that come together with the fact that the Minister of General Affairs is responsible for kingdom relations and military-like style training? So that is one of my questions. And I think that would be clear for me, once that is clear for me, Mr. Chairman, it will then help me in moving forward with the questions that I have. Because if that's not clear, then it's a difficult road to trod if we can't get that information. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Doran. I see MP Roseberg has requested the floor. So before you start, MP Roseberg, I'm going to allow the Prime Minister and the Minister of Justice to answer those questions to MP Doran, and then I'll revert back to you considering the way we move forward. Minister of Justice Natalie Tackling, you have the floor.
Yes, I'll start. At least the PM clarified to me that when he referred to, oh no, that was MP York's questions. I'm not answering those yet. Just MP Doran, military-style training. So that was also not, maybe we read the agenda wrong because, you know, there was so much talk about the SVT program. When it comes to the military-style training, there's also correspondence dating back from 2018 as well from the previous governments and prime ministers between the Ministry of Defense. From a Ministry of Justice perspective, one of the reasons that we're not in favor of a military-style training or a Curacao, Arumil kind of, where they have their own militia, is because of the fact that we already have a very scarce pool from which justice has to fish out of. So that means that people going into a military-style training become Marines in working for the Dutch Ministry of Defense, meaning that we have less police officers, less immigration officers, less customs officers. And that is the reason that we are not actively exploring this as an option, because it makes our pool even smaller. And this is also a concern of the Dutch Ministry of Defense, which I have correspondence on, where they are also not keen to fish out of a pool where they know that we already don't have enough people to be able to service the Ministry of Justice. And I think the PM did have something to say about, I think he did mention a VEVA type education, which is there's 3 different options that you can think of within this. You have, and these are also matters that can be explored within the feasibility study, and we have discussed this with the Ministry of Defense, where we need to discuss what is it that we want as a country. The first option is a type of SVT, social vorming. Then what the PM mentioned, the VEVA, which is a kind of MBO opleiding. And then you have the concept of a St. Martin militia, similar to Aruba and Curacao. So the Curacao and the Arumil, as it's called there. So those are the 3 kind of flavors that you have. For today's meeting, given that it was more about youth and all of that, we thought it was more, that was where we were going with this. So that's the reason that military training wasn't discussed. And I hope that that clarifies a little bit the point of the stance of the ministry.
MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It brought me actually through you, Mr. Chairman, with more confusion, Minister, because the agenda point is clear. It doesn't state SVT training, it states military-based articles. The letter is even very clear in terms of the direction. Now, what I didn't understand from the minister is that if we do have military-style training, it takes away from our pool of justice officials. That's a little confusing for me. Why? Because I can't just throw numbers out there, but I'll just throw a number out there. My colleague Iran isn't here, so it's safe to do that with statistics. When you talk about the police, the prison, Coast Guard, customs, I would go as far as to say maybe 60% of them went through military-style training, and that is just a fact. So when they do the military-style training, which is basically for 1 year, they then They get job by the Coast Guard, they get job by the prison, they get job in the customs. That is normal. So for me to hear that it takes away from the pool is a bit confusing to me. And just to be very, very clear, hence the reason you see the training in Curacao is because I'm hearing different talks about we should start our own military base here, and that's what Doran wants to do. That's absolutely not true, because I understand that we do not have the volume, we do not have the finances to push an initiative like that. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I've met with Minister Hato of Curacao, your colleague, Minister Dowers of Aruba most recently, and all of them gave their nod of approval, in essence, to be able to assist St. Martin, because even in Aruba, during IPCO, where we all were briefed as members of parliament, they have a shortage in terms of applicants. So they have a shortage in terms of applicants. We have a need for that training, or we lack that training then, so to speak. So if we're able to send 10 young men to do the training, they will then add to their volume. We pay the fees, which also in the letter, and that's why I find it strange through you, Mr. Chairman, that the minister said that it wasn't clear. I even have a breakdown in terms of the monthly compensation per trainee at the age of 18, 1,100 guilders and 1,123 guilders. Goes to straight to the age of 23 and above, 1,500 guilders. All of this is very, very clear and written in the letter. Curacao highlighted several benefits aligned with St. Martin's national objective, including stronger discipline and structure for the youth seeking direction, increased pathways into law enforcement, justice, and uniformed service careers, opportunities to reduce youth vulnerabilities and delinquency, additional training capacity that can assist the national emergencies, enhance inter-island cooperations within the kingdom. So to mention that it was not clear, I find that a bit confusing. And to the second point with regards to taking away from the pool is even more confusing, because to me that training forms the basis for said pool that we are referring to. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave my points there for now until some more clarity is given. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Doran. I now give the floor, as promised, to MP Shamira Roseberg. MP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Blessed afternoon to the Minister of Justice and the support staff, and the Prime Minister and his support staff, to the Public Tribune, and to my honorable colleagues present here today, and of course to the people of St. Martin that are tuned in. First of all, Minister of Justice, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for your presentation. I'm happy to hear, first of all, that the crime fund finally will be implemented. A plan will be presented when the budget is presented, so that we can get those projects going. That being said, I am happy to see that we have received a detailed presentation on this topic, seeing the interest of us as members of parliament in regards to this topic. Just to clarify or to gather the thoughts, I am aware of MP Doran's initiative to present this meeting and mentioning the topic at hand. I'm also aware of it being called military training. I'm also aware of several topics being mentioned in regards to SVT from my side. But just to maybe clarify or get the understanding, if the ministry can look into if there are several trainings or if it's all under the same umbrella, because I have a feeling that maybe, and I can be wrong, we're talking about the same but in different phases. If that's the case, can that be clarified? If it's not the case, can the ministry look into the different projects and present the possibility for those different projects, so that we have a holistic approach in that sense? It was mentioned that the reason I'm saying that is because based on also the letter of MP Doran and what was brought forward, and then looking at the presentation which was presented by the ministry, and then myself getting the presentation of SVT and what is mentioned in that presentation of Aruba, I'm seeing the similarities. It's also talking about farming, military training, compensation for the youth, also looking at discipline and making sure that you get job opportunities, and then afterwards graduating and getting the opportunity to follow a vervolg, further studies, as also being brought forward when we had a presentation here in Parliament, where you have the SVT and then also the VEVA, which was also presented by the Prime Minister, which focused on veiligheid and vakmanschap. But that, in my humble opinion, is a vervolgopleiding, so you cannot enter into the VEVA without the SVT. Clarify that if that is incorrect, Minister of Justice, but how I understood it, and that's why I'm happy that we are having this meeting, is that the SVT is the start, is the goal, is to enhance youth employment and future participation. And then you have the different phases, phase 1, which is 4 months, and then you have phase 2, which then includes the job market and having the collaboration with the community. And then once that has been completed, then you have the option into entering, if officially, into Curacao, into Arumil, or to doing the VEVA opleiding. So I would like to know if that's the case, or if there is a other military training that we're missing, which MP Doran is referring to, and if that is there, if that can be looked into as well, seeing that there's clearly a misunderstanding there, and the MP would like to get that clarified. And I'm also curious if there are other projects, so that we make use of the best possible project for Sint Maarten. It was also brought forward by the ministry. I'm happy that my questions in regards to the crime fund were answered, that there is a possibility to have a pilot option. And the reason why I ask that, because I am aware that crime fund is not for a structural effort, it's project-based. But I'm always in favor of getting something started, and then after having the opportunity to continue with it, instead of not doing anything and waiting until it's fully finalized, seeing that that can take years. And I don't think we should wait years, especially if it is considering our youth. So it was already asked by previous MP, but once we have this policy plan concluded in the budget and approved by Parliament, what will be the time frame to start? That was already asked, but I just would like to focus on that as well to get the answer in that regard. Other than that, I can remember in the summer in 2024, where I also looked into the possibility of working with the SJB, the probation office, to look and see what possibilities there are when you have the young adults that fall in the hands of the law, that they will have the opportunity to get stable jobs after doing their community service. And then looking at your socio-economic factors, where you're mentioning there's no job opportunity, I believe, especially once the crime fund is into effect, next to the projects that you have mentioned already, which are going to start once it is in effect. I am going to those projects, the therapy, health pilot, etc. I would like to ask the ministry as well to look into the possibility of the job training for ex-offenders, and also help in job creation through helping them with CVs, etc., because that also can help into reintegrating back into in society. So more projects also focused on that. But then also we have seen what Sint Maarten can do on a level of sport, especially once there is funds for it and the kids can actually go. Also look at crime fund level in that regard for education, sports, and social development, because once there is a structured daily program availability, the youngsters will not hang at places where they shouldn't hang. And I believe that the Crime Fund, next to the projects that are mentioned already, should look into that, to those tangible options, which a lot of youth currently need the use of. So just in regards to those projects, and I submitted a letter in regards to other project opportunities as well. So once the ministry get a chance to look at those, it would be appreciated. Yeah, the HALT, I'm very much interested in the HALT project to know also when that will start once it has been agreed to with Parliament, the policy plan, that we're in agreement with it. Let me see, I wrote some other stuff down. Then I must also say that the fact that the ministry, through a Rijkstrainee from BZK, Miss Naomi, I think, Miss Naomi Hassel or Roberts, I'm not sure, that she came to St. Martin, and I also hope that she will stay here. Hopefully working in Parliament, though, instead of the ministry, just saying, but it's a great win for St. Martin. So wherever she will end up, I believe it's a benefit for St. Martin. And yes, I also must say to you, Mr. Chair, that I'm also looking forward to the Caribbean Field Lab results. It's very nice to see St. Martin working on that project on a Caribbean level, and I was involved also in listening to the different projects. And what I found so unique about the St. Martin project is the fact, as mentioned by the ministry, that the youth is being involved, and the youth is being involved in creating their own solution. And often the youth is not involved. And why I like this project is that, you know, often you hear you would like to get the input of the youth, but why would I provide you input? What am I getting for it, you know? And the fact that there is a compensation, and I will say it as it is, like, you know, if I have to choose between hanging on the block or helping in a project that where one part will bring me more solutions in a sense that I need at that moment, that's the reality. And until we find something that will not make that the reality anymore, then we should have those conversations. And that's why I'm happy that the Caribbean Field Lab is providing that opportunity for the youth in need. So I'm looking forward to that, that outcome, and hopefully St. Martin's idea will be the one that will win if it comes to that. So I would like to, just to conclude, get clear answers in regards to starting dates, because I'm seeing that the ministry has been busy. I'm also happy that what was brought forward by MPs is also taken in consideration, and that the ministry is willing to work together and to brainstorm, because at the end it's not only a justice issue, it starts with VSI, if I am pretty honest, and I know that the Minister of VSI also mentioned that he's willing and open to work on topics like that, also in regards to the job market, which I spoke about with the ministry and also with the departments, to creating job opportunities for ex-offenders so that they will not fall into the crack. I know job opportunities were created through different job markets for the ones in need, but I believe that also for ex-offenders, that should be a possibility, because then you can create the difference that is needed. So FESA, education and justice approach, and then in regards to the military as well, a general affairs approach is much needed. So I'm looking forward to further collaboration and also getting clear guidance in regards to the SVT itself. As I mentioned, Aruba, when I visited, made it clear that there are spaces available, and the ministry, I think it would be nice to look into if that is feasible, and if not, through the crime fund, what is feasible so that we can get it going. Those are my questions. I don't really have specific questions, only with the start date, but that's my contribution in regards to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. I see now MP Omar Atley has requested the floor. Omar Atley. MP Atley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, good day to the Honorable Prime Minister, the Minister of Justice, the support staff, the viewing and listening public. Mr. Chairman, I've listened to the presentation keenly, and I have noticed a trend of nice presentations, but no substance. Zero substance on what is being done. I have counted 5 times where the minister would say it's not only the shoulders of the justice, not only the shoulders of the justice. That would be okay if you wasn't in a calm where there's meetings every week. And then I understand, Mr. Chairman, why there's a discourse, because when I hear the Prime Minister said that this is a trajectory that he is on, this is a trajectory that he started, and when I read a response given February 2026 that says justice is not in line, it makes me wonder. Unless everyone read the agenda point wrong and everyone didn't know we were talking about military-style training. Because I listened keenly to the Prime Minister and he said, this is something that is not new and is being worked on. So there needs to be some cohesion in order for this to work for the country. I listened, I saw the presentation where TIAT is responsible, VSR is responsible. All of that is absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. But Mr. Chairman, everyone is within walking distance of each other. Everyone meets for coalition meetings. Everyone meets weekly. So what I was expecting to see is here is the plan. Here's what the Honorable Prime Minister is working on. Here's where justice is incorporated. Here's where we have met with TIAT, and here's where we have met with VSR. That would have been a different approach, because while we talk about what's going to happen, what should happen, crime is happening now, Mr. Chairman. Now, at this moment. And again, crime was happening when we were in government too. But again, what is your take now? What is going to happen now? Fancy presentations is not cutting it. I have seen it with the Minister of Education, seen it with the different ministers, always what we're going to do, what we're going to do. So it leads me, Mr. Chairman, to my first question. Can the Honorable Minister of Justice state clearly what is currently operational today, not planned, not in development, actually functioning, with respect to youth diversion, halt-type interventions? Through you, Mr. Chairman, the crime fund. I am happy to hear that finally a structured policy will be coming for budget 2026, by budget 2026. To our knowledge, unless I'm wrong, the budget 2026 should be here in a month and a half. So this policy will be ready in a month and a half. So I'm also assuming, or let me not assume, let me ask, will Parliament get to review this before? Approving, yeah. But like the Minister of Rami did, he brought the policy, he discussed with us, and then it will come back for approval. Mr. Chairman, the Honorable Minister of Justice spoke about the Youth Brigade and said that that is a better option that we should explore. Who should explore? The members of Parliament should explore? What I would have liked to hear, if it's such a better option, I would have liked to hear that the Ministry of Justice engaged with the Youth Brigade, and this is what the steps will be taken or required. I have noticed a trend. Whenever someone, especially members of opposition, bring anything vital for this country or anything to this government, it is taken as not constructive criticism or trying to help. It is taken as an insult, because it's always, we are working on it already. We are working on it already. A motion was presented, policies were presented for the prison. We were working on it already. A year later, nothing. Mr. Chairman, we give credit where credit is due. And all of the information up there showed crime is down, this is down, but something is wrong. And the military presence in December showed us that something was wrong. And this is why I say sometimes we don't need data on paper. We need reality and reality checks. Currently, there are no concrete plans and policies, commitments to introduce military training for youth in St. Martin. The Ministry of Justice does not support military-style training. The minister explained why, which deemed even more questions for me. But again, where are we going? What are we doing? We have 2 MPs that are championing this, and the rest MPs, I can speak for myself, I support what they are championing, but today it makes me wonder if they are championing the same thing. That's what it makes me wonder. And if not, then clearly, let's get a clear indication on which one the government can install. Because from listening to my colleague Shamira Roseberg, it's one thing, and MP Doran is another. And the Prime Minister is on the path with MP Doran's, and the Justice Minister is on the path with MP Roseberg. That is what I got clearly from this meeting today. Clearly. So there needs to be some structure and some merger so we can make it happen. The crime fund, as stated, I would really like for us to focus, and we don't always have to reinvent the wheel when we're doing this policy. Curacao did many rehabilitations, invested in sports and different things. And you are right, Minister of Justice, you are right. It has a lot to do with the well-being of the households and the well-being of our society. Parents not being able to be there for their children. But this is why exactly we need an action plan. Move away from the minimum wage, establish a livable wage. This process was already started. The information is already there and sitting on the desk of the Minister of VSA. My question to the Honorable Minister of Justice, October 20th, 2025, Ministry of Justice launches St. Martin Detention Sector Reform Program with support from Bezeka and RPB. What is the update on this? I'd like to hear the update, how far we are with rehabilitation with the prison as well. Again, I have stated over and under, these young men are being locked up at 16, 15, 5, 6 years, coming out at 20, 21. What do we expect? Eat, sleep all day, no reform, no rehabilitation. So it's important to see what is going on. When I was minister, I told the NRPB for the mental health, I said, I need a structure and a program that matches the beauty of the building. And that is what I'm asking for the prison. A structure and a program that matches the beauty of what is going to be constructed. What is going to be constructed. Guns, I see that there's a rise. So, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, to the Honorable Minister of Justice, what plans are being constructed with the Coast Guards? We speak of police, we speak of immigration. Coast Guards are the boundaries or the security of our ports, our entries. I'm not hearing much or seeing much plans with the Coast Guard. What are the plans to strengthen the Coast Guard? The guns are not being made here. The guns are coming in from somewhere. They are not just waking up and getting the guns. They are coming in. So what is the plan? Is there a plan with the French authorities, being that we have open borders, open waters? So when we strengthen on the Dutch side, they come in on the French side. I don't expect you to stop crime. Crime will never stop. That's the reality of it. It's not going to sit here and paint a perfect picture that crime will ever stop. But today, you are the Minister of Justice. And when I hear a presentation 5 times, it's not only justice, not only justice, not only justice, and I have no clear path on what justice is doing or going to do, it makes me wonder. So I reserve any further comments through you, Mr. Chair, depending on what answers I get. Then I know what route I'll take.
Thank you, MP Attlee. Does any other MP, would any other MP like the floor? I don't see no need for that now. So I'll pass the floor over to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Minister of Justice to answer the questions that were posed by the members of Parliament.
Yes, I only had one question from MP York, but I want to relay the answer to the general discussion going on. There are two things that has to be very clear and evident. We are talking of SVT, that is a program that is already actively implemented in Curacao and in Aruba as one. It's not implemented in St. Martin until now. The SVT trajectory that is being used is especially with the intention to try to help the youth that are in some challenges. If you look online also to the intention of the SVT, it stands, you can check it now, to give de jongeren een duwtje in de rug, to give them a push in the back, those that need that were those that were, for example, in contact with justice for light crime activities, etc. It's not always a must, but that intention of that SVT is to help that difficult group in the youth to see if you can readjust them on a track that is going to give them a promising future. That's one. Secondly, you have, of course, the VEVA. It is not, as is being pretended, that the SVT is the precursor of the VEVA. These two has nothing to do with each other. The SVT can be used as a step up to move forward with the VEVA. The VEVA is just like all MBO-opleidingen in the Netherlands, is just a opleiding about veiligheid en vakmanschap. That's just a education for those that wants to have, for example, a career in the army of the kingdom. That is completely something else than the SVT. A SVT person that follow that course can after that get so motivated that say, you know what, I want a specific career in the kingdom army. Then he or she can apply. One option is the MBO opleiding from the VEVA. The VEVA has nothing to do with servicing the challenged group that were, for example, with light crimes involved and confronted with the justice. That these are two separate things. What I was speaking with in March last year was with Minister Brekelmans of Defense and telling them, what are we not going, seeing that the army is a kingdom affair, why do we not more incorporate our community in being part of the kingdom, especially focusing on representing this western side of the kingdom? That has nothing to do with the SVT to actually rechannel those that were challenged in their early youth years. So there are two things that we're talking about, is the SVT and the VEVA that has to be seen separately from each other. And I repeat, this VEVA is just an MBO-opleiding, as you have the middelbare beroepsopleiding in horeca, in the hotel sector, restaurant and bars. This is just a MBO-opleiding that offers that opportunity to start a career in the Kingdom Army. That's the only thing that I wanted to give as an answer to MP York and for the general interest for the discussion that was going on. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And I hand the floor now to the Honorable Minister of Justice, Minister Tackling. You have the floor. Then I'll get back to you. Okay, go ahead, MP Doran. You have the floor, and then Minister Tackling.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I know we don't have proposal of order in a CC, so, but Mr. Chairman, I'm not only confused, I feel also a slight bit disrespected. Why? The agenda point is discussion on youth intervention options, and the second part of it, including the reintroduction of military training in St. Martin. I'm hearing about VEVA, I'm hearing about SVT. At no point any minister is addressing the agenda point. Almost make me feel a little bad for agreeing to merge it, because maybe in the merger it got lost somewhere in the juice that we're not even discussing it, not even as a point. I know exactly what the Prime Minister is talking about with the VEVA, because when I went to school, it had that option as well. And I know exactly what SVT training is. But we're talking about the reintroduction of military-style training, which no minister here is addressing. So my question is, Mr. Chairman, did everybody, like MP Otley mentioned, did everybody get the agenda point and the letter wrong? Because then I would like to ask you then, let's continue this discussion and then let me know when we could have this meeting.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the floor over now to the Honorable Minister of Justice. Minister Tacklin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with the questions from MP York. The question was asked, and it also came from MP Roseberg, so I'll answer, two birds, one stone. The estimated start date for those crime front projects. We're currently in the phase of finalizing those concrete proposals. So these are proposals that we've gotten in. There's actually a couple of projects that are as in advanced a stage for us right now. So when we're hoping to start as soon as possible, but it's also dependent on really making sure that everything is structured enough in those proposals that we can really start. But I would say within the next month or two, we hope to start some of those projects concretely. Then the MP also asked to name a few NGOs involved in any of the initiatives. I don't have those necessarily off the top of my head in terms of NGOs. The process that we went through at the ministry as well was to have a policy worker from within the ministry also reach out to the ministries of education, the ministries of VSA, to ask them to submit project proposals that would be, that fit within the mandate of the crime fund. So some of those we're also still trying to flesh out, because unfortunately we don't always get the responses that we would like. And, initially what we want to do with the policy plan is, for years, the crime fund hasn't been used in the way that it was intended to be used. What we're trying to do now is build a policy plan, build kind of bandwidths. How will we invest the money? What type of projects will be eligible for crime fund funding? Because we want to move away from a system where it's too much responsibility on the ministry to have to come up with projects. We want to let the public, let NGOs, let organizations submit projects that can be funded through the crime fund. One of the recommendations that we have as well from the country packages and TEWIO, along with recommendations from the Council of Law Enforcement, has been a better governance surrounding the crime fund, and that's something that we're working on as well. And actually, one of the recommendations is that we introduce an evaluation committee. So individual third parties would submit project proposals, and an evaluation committee will then evaluate the project to see if it is ripe for crime fund funding and if it fits within that time frame. One of the NGOs, for example, that I really want to fund, and I think that we need to schedule a meeting quickly with them to see if we can take it into this round of funding, is NSI. I don't know if we can consider them an NGO, but for me, I was very inspired by the Sports Unite project that they have going on right now, and I was invited to. I believe the MP was there as well. And to me, this is a perfect example of going out into the communities and funding the communities to be able to offer sports and recreation as pathways to keep our at-risk youth off the streets. So that is one of the ones that I hope will be in the plan by the time it comes here into Parliament, but it's one that we're also looking into. And I'm also, one of the topics that in the next week I've asked our Rijks trainee to look at as well, is to look at the projects that are already there and to think about what type of topics that we're not funding. Because a lot of times we just think about youth and communities, but what about restorative justice projects? We also have to do something for individuals who have already been in contact with the justice side, with the justice chain. Individuals coming out of the Point Blanche prison, coming out of MLC, what do we do for them? So those are things that we still want to include in the policy plan as well, and make sure that it's a transparent policy plan moving forward. Again, that everybody knows, hey, if I want to submit a project for crime fund funding, what do I need to submit? What do I need to have in order? And to work like that going forward. And of course, we're still in the kind of infant phases where this year we really went out and tried to see and talk to people and see who was interested. A lot of these projects came about either through, they were suggested by the court of guardianship or by police officers or by people who sent emails to the ministry saying, hey, I heard you mention the crime fund during a press briefing. I have this project, and that we went out and spoke to them ourselves. But that's not a sustainable model, I think, for moving forward with the crime fund, and that's one of the things that we want to work on, or that we're actively working on right now. And then you asked me to, through you, Mr. Chairman, to expound on the limitations for use, and in the context that I had mentioned it regarding MP Roseberg's question, was that it's a project-based mechanism. So once something becomes structural funding, then the crime fund is no longer the right tool to be able to use. So that was the limitation there. So we can't have that every year, like we said, okay, we can fund a pilot of the SVT. It doesn't even have to be a one-year pilot, but it can be a time-bound pilot. But once it becomes a structural, recurring program, then we need to look within the ministry in order to fund that. So it's very much not meant for recurring structural expenses of government and things like that. And in that case, then it does become something that's structural. Then I move on to MP Doran. I think that was the military training one that we've spoken about. MP Roseberg. Indeed, I think that we need to get some clarity on what the differences are and what we're talking about, because even for me right now, it's not completely clear where the line is drawn between the military style training MP Doran is talking about, SVT or VEVA. And again, these were the three options that we were also discussing with the Ministry of Defense, and where we would need to look at where does the one end and the other one begin, and vice versa, or are they part of the same project? Can they be part of the same project? Is that something that we want? And all of those questions are things that we need to consider. So I think that we need to get back to you once we've had that discussion and seen also with the Ministry of Defense what their recommendation is, or what they can educate us on in terms of the different types of projects. Then I think the crime time frame for the crime fund, we also mentioned. And then I have here other types of projects. Yeah, and then I think indeed MP Roseberg asked what types of other projects, and I think I started to talk about that as well, where we also want to look at what type of other projects can we fund, not just. Oh, yes. So, yes, we are looking at, a type of restorative justice. And I also had here a note, actually, that I wrote down. Because one of the things that we're focusing on very much within the DSRP framework and the new prison is looking at, for example, prison industries. Can we offer an opportunity to a business on the outside to scale their business within the prison using the inmates, that then the inmates can flow back into that business once they come out, as well as ex-offenders. So we would have a nice, kind of circle that would be able to repeat itself. So those are things that we are looking at, and to make sure that we haven't forgotten any type of crime prevention project that still fits within that mandate. When it comes to HALT, that was also a question that was posed. When it comes to the start date, we don't have a hard start date right now. The history was also that this was being worked on by one particular employee at the Voogdijraad, a court of guardianship, and had been to Holland, had done a lot of groundwork, and then didn't feel like in previous governments that there was the ministerial support needed to advance the project. And I think lost a little bit of the motivation in that sense. So we've been trying to reignite that fire and ensure the individual that there is ministerial support and that it is a priority for the ministry right now. So we need to pick that back up and move it forward. So also being explored. Then I get to the questions of MP Otley, and maybe what is actually happening today? There were a number of slides actually indicating what currently is happening. I know that they were also sent to Parliament, so maybe the MP would want to, in his time, look over slide 14 again, which talks about the various projects currently being worked on by KPSM Youth and Moral Division, Jeugd en Zede. We also have the youth case meeting, which takes place, I believe, monthly or bi-weekly, where individual cases are discussed and we look at pathways, whether it's punishment, prevention, or some type of structured training for that particular youth. Again, I mentioned that our Jeugd en Zede, the CPOs, SROs, go to parent-teacher conferences, they go to the schools. Our CPOs have a number of active projects that they're working on right now that are not just in the development phase, but actually currently the reality. Our school resource officers as well. And again, as we mentioned, the Caribbean Field Lab project is also one that is currently active. Then when it comes to the Youth Brigade, actually the Youth Brigade, since January 2025, I've requested them to submit a proposal for the crime fund, and I'm still waiting. So maybe if they hear me, I hope that they will submit another proposal again. Or they would submit the proposal to begin with. And we've also been trying to have discussions with them, but unfortunately they canceled the meeting on us a few weeks back, or maybe a month or so ago. So we've been hoping to sit and speak to them again. But I know that this was also something that was being championed by Minister Richardson at the time. We found documents within the ministry where she had looked at SVT and different type of options in Curacao, and also had chosen to look at, hey, is there a way for us to recognize the Youth Brigade more structurally and work with the Youth Brigade instead of sending people abroad or introducing a new structure here? So it's not something that I just mentioned in passing, but it is something that we've had discussions. We're waiting for proposals, and that was previously explored in the cabinet, in which the MP was also part of the COM. Then I was asked for an update on the DSRP. The DSRP actually has its own Facebook and Instagram page, I would like to add, in which we are constantly kind of pushing updates when it comes to anything relevant within the DSRP. Part of this as well is the support from Suriname. We've held education workshops. We had the speaking engagements when we had Mr. Shaka Senghor that came and spoke to our inmates. We brought Alesko Violinas back into the prison, and he spoke to the inmates. It was a very powerful, powerful session. We're actually currently working on a suggestion for the prison that MP Roseberg actually brought to us in terms of a speaking engagement for someone that would like to come to the prison. And within the next 2 weeks, as I've said already, we will restart the education programs in the prison. So things are moving along when it comes to the DSRP. And for everybody watching at home, and also for the MPs, please follow the DSRP Facebook page and Instagram page for updates. And of course, the Ministry of Justice page, where we're constantly providing updates on things that are happening. Then the question of what are the plans to strengthen the Coast Guard? So the Coast Guard is actually a kingdom institution, and the policy plan of the Coast Guard is approved by the 4 ministers of justice in the YVO. And I actually pulled up the policy plan for 2026-2029. And for St. Martin, the policy areas are also illegal guns. So I can ensure the MP that this is actually being worked on. So to read from this, for St. Martin, the policy goals are the transport of drugs, human trafficking, human smuggling, the transport and handle of illegal firearms, and of course, other policy plans in terms of strengthening our intelligence position. So again, this is approved by all 4 ministers of justice within the kingdom. We approved this policy plan in January at the YVO. So the Coast Guard is working in accordance with this mandate from 2026 until 2029. Further to that, we also last year approved the new function book of the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard will be growing for the entire Dutch Caribbean. For St. Martin, there will be an additional 20 FTEs for the St. Martin location, so the Coast Guard is also expanding. Then, is there a plan with the French authorities? The Prime Minister meets frequently with the Préfet. I join him when it has to do with justice-related matters, and we have a very good working relationship with the Gendarmerie on an operational level, so between the Chief of Police and the Commander of the Gendarmerie. There is intelligence sharing and discussions that go on, and of course, cross-border case management. Indeed, what the MP mentioned, it's also a concern of ours, how do the guns get here? And it's one of the things that we want to look at to see how are they coming in? Are they coming in through the French side? And actually the question came up of the Coast Guard, but if we look at the number of seizures when it comes to firearms when it comes to the Coast Guard, we know that in any case, they're not coming in ways that the Coast Guard can intercept. And one of the plans, of course, within the growth of the Coast Guard is that within the next year, we will also have a radar that would be actually put on the top of Mount Scenery that would service the St. Martin, Saba, and Statia. So of course, we will have even more eyes on what is happening there, but as rightfully noted, we don't know what is coming in French water. They don't have an active Coast Guard as we do in that respect. So that is the question of how are things coming in. But besides that, one of the things that we want to strengthen is customs. We're hoping as well with the introduction of Asukuda that we will have better view of kind of suspicious packages that are coming in, and that we'll be able to more efficiently through the customs and also look at firearms coming into the country. Because believe it or not, I think many things come into this country just in the regular mail and not necessarily on boats and things like that. So I think that covers the questions thus far.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Justice. I now pass the floor over to MP De Weaver. You change your mind? Oh, no. MP De Weaver, you have the floor. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon to everyone. Sorry, I don't mean to sort of have the minister pedal back, but I just really wanted to get an understanding, and I'm sure we can in another meeting, of the type of things that can be financed by or funded by the crime fund. And one of the things that always come up, they also do presentations for us. They're pretty active in the community, and given the discussion on military and just sort of training things to keep at-risk kids even active is the Youth Brigade. So I was just wondering if the Youth Brigade was ever something that would be approved for that funding, because I'm very familiar already with it being funded through different NGOs. And I just wanted to get clarification on if it's not, then why? Like what criteria has to be followed in order to make sure that it can be covered by that? Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, MP De Weaver. I now hand the floor over to MP York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the ministers for the explanation. I have a few questions. As it pertains to the minister's explanation about the use of the crime fund and it being project-based and not specifically not for structural subsidy, basically, right? Structural funding. When I look at the programs such as the therapy program, the Project Sing program, the Kids at Sea program, the HALT program, are all, and it's on the slides saying crime fund programs. I assume that they're being funded through the crime fund. Am I to assume, or are we to assume that these are one-off programs? Because if they're being funded through the crime fund, basically it's going to be a one-time thing and then it's over. So my question would be, I understand the pilot sense of the programs, but what mechanism is there to ensure that if the program catches on or is successful, that it will be continued? Because spending money on something that's gonna just happen once with no plan on how to continue it, that's effectively also wasting money. So that would be my question pertaining to that. Secondly, I must say the presentation was very extensive, and that brought me also to my comment of it seems like the ministries has been busy. However, when the minister was explaining all of the things as it pertains to NGOs, etc., the two words or the word that was used frequently was the ministry wants to, right? And that gave me the feeling that a lot of things are still not clear, or basically a lot of things still need to be thought out, but yet I saw an extensive presentation. So that instantly brought confusion for me, because for 1 minute I thought, okay, everything is al voorbedacht and basically in pen, but it would seem to be still pencil. So can the minister bring clarity to that for me? And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I even at a certain point to the minister explaining a certain question, giving an answer to a certain question. I think it was from MP Doran. I turned around and I told him, man, you might as well have asked somebody else to submit these agenda points. Why am I saying that? Because when it comes to the agenda point of military training, I've already heard 2-3 different answers on the topic. And the reason why I'm saying that is coming in, the agenda point was there, and when the MP reminded the minister, hey, minister, what about my agenda point? The minister said basically, the answer was, I'm paraphrasing right now, it was already spoken on, a similar topic was spoken on with Holland, and even Holland wasn't really happy, or not really jumping at the idea because of XYZ reasons. And okay, if that was the answer of the minister at the time, that's the answer of the minister. When the meeting started, the Prime Minister said the agenda point topics falls in line with what the government is working on. Then there's a letter here stating with an answer saying that there's currently no concrete plans or policy commitments on said matter. And then just now, the minister answered saying she is confused with SVT, what we're talking about, SVT, military training. One thing, and my phone started blowing up.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. From the bottom, from the top to the bottom. MP Roseberg, you have the floor, and
Thank
then
you.
after we have MP Otley, who's requested the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Seeing the ongoing discussion and the fact that MP Doran referred again to his agenda point, and reading the agenda point, it's mentioning reintroduction of military-style training. Seeing that there seems to be a confusion or a misunderstanding, I would like to know, seeing that it's mentioning reintroduction, what was there before? Just let's start by the basics. What was there before? Seeing that it's mentioning reintroduction, if that can be answered, and if it's clear what was there before, can we look at if it can be there again? And if it's something different that was there before, then that needs to be answered, because clearly it seems that there is being spoken about something else, and if that's the case, we need to get it clear what that is so that we can see where it is in line and where it is different, because I haven't heard the ministry or a Ministry of Justice or the Prime Minister mentioning that they're not in favor. I actually heard that they are in favor of military-style training, mentioning SVT, mentioning other words. So I would like to get it clear what are the different options and flavors possible for St. Martin, and that we can choose for the best. That being said, also where there's made a difference in regards to the youth at risk, where I believe the SVT plays a role, because often with the SVT you don't need to have a basic diploma, and by other military related training, but again, correct me if I'm wrong, and if it's not the case, you need a certain basic level of education line. So if that can be clarified, I would like that to be clarified so that we are on the same page. Also, in regards to what I understood the ministry was mentioning, seeing that the SVT is for 17 and up, has the ministry looked into seeing that we currently also have a lot of youth between the age of 12 and 18 that fall in the hands of the law? What is possible for that group of youth? And then especially as well for the young girls on St. Martin. I don't think I need to say more than that, but we all know what the current reality is for the young girls on St. Martin. Then in regards to the crime fund, I have understood from the ministry based on the presentation the different projects that are currently planned. I also heard in the discussion the other organizations that are being looked into to see if they are and willing to apply for the crime fund. Seeing that next to in the ministries and the different organizations that were mentioned, there might be other organizations that we're not aware of, and I would like to ask the ministry through you, Mr. Chair, if it hasn't been done as yet, because I understood it was done through the ministries, to maybe place something online as well, because, you know, to know and make sure that we get the best possible for our youth and for the ones that can assist within the crime fund and bring it to the level that it should be. And I think it's also important to know that at least how I read the law, it's on a yearly basis. So the projects are projects on a yearly basis that can come back as well, because I do believe that HALT is not something that will only be for a year. It will be something that will have to come back. And projects that can have effect on St. Martin might come back on a yearly basis in that project plan. So yes, it needs to be something that is not structural basis, but I don't think we need to read structural in the structural form of, okay, it cannot continue for a long time if it's beneficial for St. Martin. It's just how you read the law, I believe, because again, HALT is not something that's only for 1 year, but that's of course on the ministry's decision. Let me see if there's something else that I wanted to say or contribute. No, I think that's it for now. So I personally don't feel that we are ver uit elkaar in that sense. I think it's just to know where we're standing now and where we're going, and making sure that all possible avenues are being tackled, literally. So, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. I now give the floor to MP Omar Atley.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is when I speak about realities and trying to look pretty. I was told, oh, with the detention reform, you can go online and anyone that wants to research it can research it. That's the problem. Through you, Mr. Chairman. The problem is there's nothing tangible. The people that needs to be affected are not being affected. I would have liked to hear that, yes, this program is in place. We have instituted this. This is what has happened since instituted. Not going online, a detention reform program. We're proud of that it's online. There's a lot of things that's online that is not enacted, that is not happening in this country. Then I've been sent to slide 14. Very proud. What is being done? Then we have the case-by-case youth meeting with the prosecutors. How is that going? The school reform, the school resource officers, sending officers to Miami for training. CPO active, the trust box. CPO outreach, barcode officer flyers. Mr. Chairman, again, asking a basic question. Again, maybe I am too practical and would have to use one of the best slogans I've ever heard from then Maurice Lake, back to basics, because we have lost its basics. And when my good colleagues spoke, and this is what I got from it, the ministry wants, the ministry would like. A whole slide just to find out we're not even on the topic. Just to find out we're not even on the topic. Come rush 2 o'clock meeting for a whole different meeting. Then we might as well have tell MP Roseberg to submit her meeting, because that's what this seems like it was about, even to take time to answer questions from the MP. But disregard the following MP that called the meeting. Mr. Chairman, I'll just leave it there. I don't want to create a back and forth because obviously maybe I'm too basic or too practical. So we'll just leave it there.
Thank you, MP Atley. I would like to make some comments and some suggestions, because I have to agree with MP Roseberg. I don't think we're too far off. I think there's a line and we have two different perspectives, but if we work to coming towards the middle, we could find something. And I did not read the agenda points to the general public, so we spoke about the merging of the agenda points, but I think it's important. Yeah, well, I'll read them again. Update on the current crime situation. Agenda point 1 was update on the current crime situation affecting the youth and the communities. Agenda point 2 was discussion on youth intervention options, including the introduction of military-style training in Curacao. And agenda point number 3 was update on the Justice Ministry effort to strengthening prevention and community support, which goes on to And then the Minister of Justice, along with the Prime Minister, gave their explanation as to what they were working on. And I must say that MP Doran has taken the military style thing as his baby, because he's called me many times and wanted to do this meeting. And I told MP Doran that I too support something like this, because I come from a St. Martin where we knew, I knew growing up, where there was young people who would go to the army in Curacao. You know, it's when they got to a certain age, they would disappear, and then they'll be down in the army in Curacao, and then some of them transitioned into police officers, some of them came back and contributed to the society. I think what is lacking in St. Martin over the years, and the breakdown of our social structure, which has allowed a portion, because I don't believe in a blanket statement either, a portion of our young people to so-called go astray. And I think this initiative will help to save as much of them as you can. So I think my proposal to both the minister and the MP, and along with MP Roseberg, is let's see how we can incorporate this into the plans of the Ministry of Justice, that we can come with a working solution that satisfies all. Because I think at the end of the day, what really happens is young people, if we can save one young child, if we can just save one. And when I speak, you know, sometimes when you're a kid, you do a lot of things because you're young. You know, you do a lot of things with not really taking the consequences of those actions into consideration. What is happening now in our society is we've realized that those things last throughout your life, especially with social media and stuff. You could find anyone at any time. But I think through these initiatives, different initiatives, there isn't one solution that is going to solve the problem that we face with youth delinquency. There isn't one solution. And any ideas that can come to help to create a better society, I'm all for it. So while the Prime Minister may have his suggestion, and the Minister of Justice may have hers, and MP Doran may have his, and MP Roseberg may have hers, and MP Otley may have his, and so does MP Otley. And collectively, I feel if we come together, we can come with something that we all know that won't solve 100% of the problems, but what it will do in the end is it will help to create a better St. Martin and help to save a couple of young people. Because God knows, if it wasn't for sports and if it wasn't for the St. Martin that I grew up in, I would have been one of those young people. So I speak from that experience. I didn't go to the military, but St. Martin was a different community then, because you were actually being raised by the community. So everything you do was being reported right back home before you got home. So that's not the case now, because we went from actually, that was community policing at its best. So we went from where your neighbors and anyone older could have disciplined a child to don't touch my child, leave my child, I'm going to discipline my child. And ultimately, this is where we're at now. The results of that has come home to bear fruit. So my suggestion is, I think to the minister and the Prime Minister, along with MP Shamira Roseberg and MP Doran, I think collectively we can make a proposal and present and join it all together, because one thing we can all identify and agree upon is that we have a problem and we have to deal with the problem. I see MP Doran has asked for the floor. MP Doran, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't agree with you more, because again, my point of departure from this was solely based on solutions. I want to go back to some historical facts. In 1996, the mandatory training was ended, where you were obliged at the age of 18 to go and do the mandatory military training. My grandfather went to the military. He was born in 1917. My uncles went, and they were born in the 50s and the 60s. And most recently, I would say my brother, born in 1987, he went to the military. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about VEVA, SVT, and all those things. Those things are good. The VEVA is actually something that you can do if you finish Milton Peters College and you go to the Netherlands. The study is there as a choice. Just like you could study business administration, you can study VEVA. And then you can continue and grow and grow and grow. The SVT is a program geared towards troubled youth between the young teenagers, go up to the adolescents, etc., and they get the training and so forth. The military training, what the idea behind calling this meeting was about, it's what it is. At the age of 18, you volunteer. What we have is a decrease in people that are volunteering in Aruba and Curacao, hence the reason both Minister Hato, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the ministers, Minister Hato and Mr. Dowers, are willing to assist us in however we want to plug that, because they need persons, menskracht, so, and we also want to get the opportunity. So I'm willing, I'm stating this here today, April 8th, through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to sit with the minister and the prime minister to be more clear, more thorough, to brainstorm how we can reintroduce. And the reason why there's reintroduced, because we had it during the Netherlands Antilles period. So it's nothing new under the sun. It's just that we lost the infrastructure, just as we lost a lot of things based on the division of assets, and the Curacao had the Suffisant base, and that's where it is. It didn't move from Suffisant to St. Martin because we don't have the volume to carry it. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleading with the ministers to allow us, well, right now we're the two with the initiatives, me and MP Roseberg, and everybody else that want to bring something. But I would like to have that audience. I'd like to know if the ministers are willing to entertain that discussion so that we can, whether it's a conference call with the colleague ministers in Curacao and Aruba, to open that door. When I requested this meeting, I only initially had spoken to Minister Hato, hence the reason you can clearly see Curacao is written there, because Aruba left the Netherlands Antilles since 1986. So therefore, I don't know much before that, before doing my research. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would like to know if that is a possibility through you to the ministers so that we can actually get the ball rolling. For me, it's about solutions. I just want to be part of the solution and not complain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Doran. I hand the floor over to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luc Marcelino. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Chairman, thank you. I acknowledge the worries of the MP, and that's why I am with him in his train of thoughts. It is something that we all have to think about to solve our national challenges that we have with our youth, for example, is that we have to think that the proposal you have about the obligatory indiensttreding, as you are suggesting, no, but the option of vrijwillig, optional, yeah, that is at this particular moment already possible. That's one. And secondly, if you opt to do that, important is to realize that you need a Dutch passport to do that, and seeing the multinational dimension of our community that I find the greatest ever in the world, what we have here in St. Martin. We have to be careful by focusing too much on that one, because we have a lot of people living in St. Martin, born or to be here. So that group will not be covered with that line of thoughts, because you will have to have an absolute Dutch passport to align yourself with whatever initiative directing to the army. So we will have to think together on a solution for the other group. That is a structural part of our community too. That's it. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Minister of Justice, you have the floor.
Yes. To go back, maybe as the Prime Minister just said with respect to that, the agenda point, and with MP Doran, I think during my presentation, I also said multiple times that I welcome the opportunity to work together with both members of parliament championing this topic, to move this from a concept into something that works for St. Martin. As I mentioned in my discussions with the commander of the Marines, he had also mentioned when this came up just prior to IPCO, actually, I had that discussion with him when this topic was going around. And again, looking at, hey, there are multiple streams that we can follow. Again, there's a military-style militia training. You have the SVT. You have a type of VEVA, as the Prime Minister mentioned. And again, these are things that we need to talk about within that feasibility to look at which one of these things makes sense for St. Martin. And we also need to define what is the problem and how do we want to fix it? Because, we're saying a lot of things that we want, but that's part of that feasibility to scope the questions that we're asking properly to then look at what exactly are we saying, because there's, I think, a lot, while we all, I think, want to achieve the same goal at the end of the day. So I think that it's important that we align that. So the MP asked, through you, Mr. Chair, if there was willingness on the side of the ministers to have that engagement and discussion. Yes, absolutely, and we'll repeat that once more to look at what is the best option for St. Martin. And I think, too, that I myself was a little bit confused because I heard the reintroduction of the dienstplicht. I should add that reintroduction of the dienstplicht is also a kingdom matter and not just a St. Martin matter. So if that's something that needs to be reintroduced, then we need to have that discussion on a kingdom level. Further to that, if it's a vrijwillig thing, then anybody right now, if you have a Dutch passport, can join the Marines. I have a cousin of mine that also was that is a Marine still. So that option is there. What is a lot of times the issue for our local population is the Dutch language. And I've also had those discussions with Coast Guard, with Defense, of how do we open up the door to our youth? We had, and I don't know if Parliament was there when they came here with the Groningen, and we went on the ship for the day and we saw, and I said, wow, this is so cool. You should invite the primary schools actually to come on a ship like this and see what it's like to have a career in defense, to see, hey, I can be an engineer, I can be a mechanic, and I can actually sail the world and work for the Ministry of Defense. And I think that those are things, but then again, one of those issues is, they don't speak the Dutch language. And then how are you going to go through a training like that? How are you going to communicate military demands if you don't speak Dutch? And so I think that that's also something that we need to account for. And it's also something that was discussed in my initial meeting when I mentioned to the commander of the Marines what the MPs had been championing, whether it's a military-style training, as MP Doran is calling it, or SVT, as MP Roseberg is calling it. And one of the issues there, even with a VEVA, as the PM said, is what is the language of instruction? And how do you then ensure that we can actually embed that properly into our society? So I'm not saying this to say that I'm for or against, or I am at the point where I'm willing to explore. And I'm just saying these things as, hey, we also need to consider all of these things, because sometimes things sound really nice, but when we look at how they can be implemented, it's a lot more complicated than that. So I do think it's important that we explore it and that we look at the options. Then if I can go into the questions that were posed in round two. Mm-hmm. Then MP De Wever asked about what projects can fall under the crime fund. And it's broad in that sense, where the crime fund talks about crime prevention projects. So if the project has a crime prevention element to it, then it can be eligible for funding. And again, this is why this year we want to make sure that there's actually a policy document for the crime fund that's published, that's available to everybody, that we can make graphics. And even though I got some flack just now about social media, but that people actually do access social media, WhatsApp, that we could put out these imaging and messaging so that individuals know, where do I apply, what do I have to submit? And again, it's not just saying hey, I have an idea, because a lot of times, we're not the greatest at proper project proposals. So we really need to know, where is the money going? How is it going to be spent? What is your idea? And taking that not so much from a concept, but further into an actual concrete project proposal. Then MP De Wever also asked about the Youth Brigade. I had mentioned in the previous round about the Youth Brigade. The Youth Brigade currently receives a structural subsidy, if I'm not mistaken, either from the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of General Affairs, the Youth Brigade. One of those two. Yeah, okay. And as I said, in 2025, January, they had come to present to the Council of Ministers. One of the things that came up at that time was the structural subsidy. And I had offered to them at the time, I said, hey, if you come up with a project, that I'm happy to fund that through the crime fund, but I haven't received that project proposal from them in order to be able to, I offered it as a way to supplement their structural subsidy, but then of course, looking at a project basis. And then I think that that nicely ties into the question from MP York in terms of, hey, does that mean we invest in something once and then it goes away? The institution can apply for trust fund, for crime fund funding again, but it would have to be, it couldn't be the same type of project. So every time it's a project that organization wants to do, we can look at funding it. And maybe it won't be exactly the same, but if it becomes recurrent and it's the only thing that you're doing, then it starts to be a structural subsidy, which the law then is a little bit gray on that area. Then in terms of the clarity on the projects, I know that we do have, and I'm looking over at my chief of staff, some concrete proposals. And now it's just in the phase of launching those projects and seeing where it needs to be fine-tuned. So it's not a want, but there are things that are in pen and that are in the crime fund policy document that would be submitted to Parliament. Some of them are also from the different departments, things that they need funding for. So some things still in pencil look going into pen, but there are projects listed in there already in pen. Let me put it that way. So, and again, we're looking at a broad variety of things, but there will be concrete ones. And there are already very concrete proposals there that are ready now that we just need to pull the trigger on them, for lack of a better term, because we talked a lot about guns today. Is the minister open to looking into the feasibility? I think I addressed that. And yes, to look into the feasibility of all the things I think that were mentioned here today, to look at what is the best result when it comes to the problem that we want to address. And I think that we need to first define that problem well. Is it, what age group do we want to be effective in, and is it problem kids that are already in contact with the law, so we need to define the eligible criteria of what it is that we want to fit our solution to. And I think that solution, maybe it isn't an SVT, maybe it's something that's unique to St. Martin because it's unique to the problem description that we decide on together as being the most important for us to tackle. And then there was a question about when, and again, my apologies to Sports Unite that I didn't mention the St. Martin Sports Federation. But the question, maybe a question of clarity from the MP, because you asked me when can those entities expect a response? Does that mean that they already submitted a proposal? If I can ask for a clarity, Mr. Chairman.
MPR, can you clarify?
The minister explained that the minister was looking into applying the crime fund to said project. So going off of what the minister said, I can only deduce that she's going off of a proposal that was submitted, hence the question.
Minister of Justice?
Yes. No, not as yet, because that was in the discussion too with education, then to have that meeting to see what can be funded. And it wasn't one of the projects that was offered to us by education, I believe. So that's why we wanted specifically to ask about it, to say, hey, is there a proposal that we can get when it comes to Sports Unite? Because I think some of the ministries as well filtered projects, thinking, oh, I can only submit this. And, and we said, no, you can give us multiple options, and then we can look as well to see if we have room to fund more than one thing for a particular ministry or through a particular ministry. But if I can take the opportunity now, and that they can send me a proposal, and then we will take it into account, and hopefully that we can even include it by the time the budget comes. Then MP Roseburg, the reintroduction of the military style training, what was there before. And I think I also wanted to mention, I believe that what was there before was the dienstplicht. And MP Doran also added that already. Then MP Roseburg inquired about what about the group of 12 to 18? And indeed, that is a group where right now, when we look at the crime fund projects, it's more of, hey, it's sports, it's maybe investments in the community and different things. But I think we also need to explore, because I believe even when I've been to events from the Youth Brigade, you see a younger demographic as part of the Youth Brigade as well. So again, I don't want to speak out of turn or on their behalf, but I think it's worth looking into to have that discussion to see, hey, can we, is there a distinction between kind of what type of youth are in the Youth Brigade? Is it the same as the SVT group? Is it a different type of group? And how do we keep, bad influences away from maybe kids that are a good influence or vice versa? When it comes to the young girls, that's also a concern for us. And right now, actively, no plans. And so that's something that I'm happy that you mentioned, MP Roseberg, because we will take it along to see for the young girls. And because maybe for the public at home and those viewing, is that currently we don't have a youth facility for girls. And a lot of times the girls know this, and means they spend a couple hours in the police station and then they go right back home. So, and in the past, feasibility studies were done, and because of the amount, it wasn't deemed feasible to have an entire institution or youth facility for girls specifically. But it is something that I think is still important for us to look at some type of measure that we can apply, because otherwise they know and they take advantage of that as well. And then what about reaching other organizations? I think, as I said, with that plan, right now we haven't come out too broadly in terms of, hey, come and submit a project, because we really want it to be clear and transparent. I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, well, I submitted something and they said no, but they gave it to this person. I think we want to have clear criteria where it can be open and transparent in terms of how that's done. And that's why we also want to implement that evaluation committee that would be independent as well, to look at evaluating the different proposals and see what would be eligible in a year for funding. And then the question about HALT. So we were initially thinking of the pilot to be run through the crime fund. Any initial cost that would surround that, we don't expect that to be much cost when it comes to kind of operationalizing HALT. But going forward, it would then be, because of course we would also be working on HALT legislation, and part of that funding would have to be from internal Ministry of Justice funding, and likely extra funding to go towards the Court of Guardianship to be able to properly operationalize the HALT project. And then I think that brings me to the end of these questions.
Thank you, Minister of Justice Natalie Tacklin. I now hand the floor over to Honorable Member of Parliament, MP Egbert Doran.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be clear, because I heard the Prime Minister mention and also the Minister of Justice mention that if I would want to bring back dienstplicht, which is mandatory training, it would have to go through the kingdom. I just want to be clear. That is not what I said. That is not what I would like, and that's not what I suggested. Dienstplicht ended in 1997, and I feel that it is a good thing that it ended in 1997, and in St. Martin it ended in 1996. I'm talking about voluntary military training, such as Kurmil, Arumil. I'm so glad we got this meeting, Mr. Chairman, because it is clear that we are on two different frequencies, and now that we can align the vision to see where we can meet each other to bring these options. And I just want to get, for clarity's sake, because even in the presentation, it's stated the ministry will conduct a feasibility study for the SVT, which is a social forming training. Will the ministries also conduct a feasibility study for the military style training, which is from 18 years old? That will be all, Mr. Chairman, and that's why I want to just bring that clarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Doran, and I now give the floor to MP Shamira Roseberg. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to finalize my questions, seeing what was brought forward now and seeing what the ministry also said in regards to these topics, and the fact that there will be a study in regards to the SVT, I'm looking forward to the outcome to see what is possible, especially seeing what Aruba mentioned, that there are spaces available, and also seeing that we have established and we know that there is a need on St. Martin, and then maybe even if we will do it through the crime fund, to look at creating, if the youth brigade is up for it, and if it can be combined together, or made separate, a separate department within the youth brigade, to even make it with the age level being younger. Now seeing that it has been brought forward that it is in regards to not the dienstplicht, but the vrijwilligheid of the possibility to do it, seeing that based on what the ministry has brought forward, it's already possible. I would like to get that clarified if that is indeed the case, because then it's there already. If that is what it is, then I would like to know if that is there already, what we need to do. Then we need to inform our people on St. Martin that the possibility is there. So I would like to know what do we need to do from Parliament side, or what is the ministry going to do if it has been clarified that seeing that it's not the dienstplicht, but it is on voluntary basis, and the law already gives that possibility. What does the ministry need to do at this moment to get that into effect, or is it just applying? Because I'm at this moment, I would like the best for St. Martin, and I would like to make sure that our kids, our youth, get the best possible options. But if you're at the age of 18 and you would like to apply, then you can apply at this moment, unless there is something that I'm currently missing that the ministry can bring forward to clarify in that regard. What I would like to know as well, and seeing that the ministry brought it forward, the idea into looking into the possibility in having different organizations working together with the ministry. It can be through TEAT, but it can also be on the initiative of the business community itself. The law already provides the option that from within the incarceration system that inmates can work, and that they can even work outside, or work can be brought inside. And I love the fact that the ministry is interested in looking into how it was also done in the past, creating jobs from within. So what I'm looking forward to, and I'm not sure if the ministry can give a timeline in that regard, when businesses can apply, if they already can apply, that they will be made aware that they can apply to provide options for inmates to be able to work and get certificates. And that can even also be looked in through the crime fund, thinking outside the box. If you want to get a degree in regards to whatever, from barber to nail stylist to whatever else, are being able to learn a trade, so that eventually when you serve your time, that you have that paper in your hand and you can actually do something instead of starting over on zero. So I'm happy to hear that the ministry is looking at that, and hopefully we can get a clear timeline into when persons can apply, and if they already can apply, to encourage them to apply, so that it becomes something tangible and not only on paper. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, MP Roseberg. Just a little question, and because we mentioned a lot about the crime fund. What is the crime fund, the amount presently now? And what is the annual amount that the crime fund brings in? Because I think the misconception, especially for public consumption, I think the general public may think it's a structural thing where the crime fund brings in money, a certain amount of money every year, but it's based on seizures and stuff. So can you give an elucidation as to the amount of money that is generated by the crime fund on an annual basis? Because I'm sure it fluctuates. If crime goes down, so does the crime fund.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll Indeed, just to go, I think, to MP Doran, I too am now really confused about that second agenda point, because I mentioned in my remarks at some point about Curacao and Arumil and the explanation there about why Justice had reservations about that approach, because when you do have a Curacao and Arumil, those individuals become employees of the Ministry of Defense of the Netherlands. They are Marines. And what you see in Curacao is that sometimes, in some instances, they can be uitgeleend to the police force to assist with certain public order tasks, but in principle, they are not allowed to, handle public order and things like that when it comes to that. So they are actually, and that was the discussion and where I said that we had with the Ministry of Defense, where they said, hey, well, we're less excited because we would be taking people from you that can become police officers, can become immigration officers, Coast Guard, etc., and make them part of a militia. And in that sense, they would not be available to us all the time for the urgent needs that we have on a daily basis. So, and then after it was said, no, then it was the dienstplicht but vrijwillig. And then, so I think that it does warrant further discussion, because I think, where there's a lot of sentiments and ideas that we have, and I think we just need to align them properly. And I think when it comes to that, the dienstplicht and a vrijwillige dienstplicht, MP Roseberg asked the question of, hey, what do you have to do? I did a quick Google search, and there's a website called werkenbijdefensie.nl. And if you just look on, werken bij Defensie, marinier, a website comes up where you can apply it. And actually the checklist is as follows. You need a VMBO basis, VMBO kader, VMBO gemengd. I guess these are all things of a time where before we went to school, MBO 2, 3, 4, HAVO, or VWO. And you have to be between 17 years and 28 years and 11 months. And you must have a good command of the Dutch language, both spoken and written. So, basically you can go online and apply, and I guess follow that process from there. I would assume as well that the location is in Rotterdam, so you would have to go to Holland to do that. But basically, werkenbijdefensie.nl, and then from there you see the checklists and you can apply. Then MP Roseberg had one more question that she asked when it came to, I believe, the projects in the prison. It was more about, yeah.
MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was referring to is that I remember that back in the days that businesses would go into the prison and then provide services, and then what the inmates would get, a certificate, and then afterwards, you have that certificate when you come out and you can do that same trade. And you, through you, Mr. Chair, it was mentioned that the ministry is also looking at the possibility in reintroducing that, or in a different form, that afterwards they have that paper in their hand and then they can work maybe by the same company and they can get that job opportunity. And maybe it can also be an incentive in creating tax-related benefits for that company. Why would I hire someone from within? Hey, everybody deserves a fair chance, and this will be the benefit for you in that sense. So I was looking at that part when the ministry, if the ministry already introduced it, and if not, when the ministry will introduce that, because it can be beneficial. And also, seeing that I have the floor, maybe it can be an idea to you, Mr. Chair, to make it known to the public as well that that opportunity of military, being able to go to the military is there already, and how they can apply, because clearly I myself don't know, like, okay, what route should I follow? And I think more of us don't know, at least let me speak for myself. So maybe it can be an idea to make it known for the ones that speak Dutch and are willing and able to go. Yes, thank you.
Minister of Justice, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the clarification, MP Roseberg. This is indeed one of the cornerstones of the DSRP and the reform that's going on right now in the prison. And Currently, of course, as the implementation partner for the soft components, we have the UNODC, and this is one of the things that's in that trajectory to be worked on. So looking into, I know that they've had discussions with NEPA and other types of institutions that can come in and be able to offer these types of programs and build something really that can withstand the test of time, you know, and I think we're really trying to build something in the prison that isn't dependent just on one person, one organization, but that we look for different ways to structure them and provide different skills as well and trades. So that is something through the UNODC route that those discussions are ongoing and partners are being spoken to look at who would be able to have the infrastructure to be able to provide that service in the long term. Then I had the questions from the chairman regarding the crime fund. I don't have today's number off the top of my head, and that was one we've been pending from the financial controller to get an overview of what is currently in the crime fund. But the last time that, from the last information that I had, and this is maybe a month, you know, maybe I think a month or two ago, it was in the approximate range in terms of money from the crime fund, about 4 million guilders. And then we also have money in the crime fund that's not crime fund money. It's money that was put there by BZK for different other earmarked projects. So we have about 3 million, or maybe a little less by now, for different projects such as versterking grenstoezicht and ondermijningsgelden and things like that. Bestuurlijke aanpak ondermijning. And so I think the balance was around 7 million, of which about 4 million is crime fund money. And indeed, I would need to do a kind of historical review of what the averages of what comes in on a yearly basis. But indeed, that's also the thing about the crime fund and not being able to structurally fund things where you don't know how much is going to be in the crime fund. So we also have to be prudent in terms of the spending of the crime fund. So it is indeed matters that when it comes to fines that are paid, money that is seized, criminal funds, and things like that. And one of the things that we're actually working on currently is looking at the option with the prosecutor's office and with the police to introduce. Right now, we have the functionality in our border management system at the airport to record fines. So if a person has an open fine, that then immigration would see the fine pop up in the system when they're trying to leave the country. This is something that Aruba and Curacao do as well. And then, for example, if you then are trying to clear immigration, the immigration officer would see it. They would call a police officer because it's a criminal fine, meaning that the immigration officer cannot enforce it. A police officer would come and get you. You know, you have a terminal, and either you pay the fine, you can't leave the country, so you either pay it or you get, basically a lot of times criminal fines, once they become definite, they also have a vervangende hechtenis, meaning that you can be put in jail if you don't pay that fine. So this system is something that works really well in Aruba and Curacao. I actually visited the immigration in Aruba and also their border police within the airport to look at how the system works. And I spoke to the company that manages our border management and Aruba's to look at the functionality. And it is something that's possible. So we're working now with the public prosecutor's office and to see we have police officers through the Alpha team that are actually at the airport. And this would be one way of increasing compliance when it comes to fines, which would also be a good way for us to get more structural funding into the crime fund as well. So that is something that we're working on. And of course, you never know, because I recently also read in the newspaper of some recent court cases in, as we call it, criminal seizure cases, where individuals have to pay quite hefty sums into the crime fund. So I'm looking forward to receiving it. But of course, it's a matter of them making that payment as well, and the prosecutor ensuring that those payments are made and that we go after the money. So we see it as one thing, but that's one of the points.
Thank you for all of your, I don't think that there are any more questions. So I'd like to thank the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luc Marcelina, and his support staff, and the Honorable Minister of Justice, Ms. Natalie Tackling, and her support staff, and to you, the members of Parliament, for participating in this Justice Committee meeting, and for the initiators of this meeting, Mr. MP Doran and MP Shamira Roseberg. Thank you for your cooperation in this matter. I hereby close this meeting.